it subconsciously, it just feels right. And you're like, oh
Hmm.
yeah, I feel like I'm at school. I'm having a regular experience with people I've known over the years, like archetypes or characters and things like that. And you just let the information flow right in.
Yeah, and then you've got to think about like why are they, you know, why are they so afraid of Fox or why are they so afraid of Trump? And the answer is because Trump can undo them, right? Trump has shown them that he's like a bigger star and that people are more loyal to him. Um,
Well, he started this game way before they came into it.
yeah, he started it, and then like there was one thing too, if you remember during the 2016
Tried to
race where
kneecap them right off the bat.
they tried to kneecap him, and then he turned around and like stabbed them through the throat. And I remember watching that, like the only Rosalie O'Donnell line. And I know Scott Adams and other people have said that was the moment when like Trump clearly won. And I think that's true up to a point. But I also think it showed, like, he also boycotted at one
Yeah.
point. He boycotted one of their debates, the Fox
Yep.
debates, and like it was the lowest ratings that they'd had. And I think he just really understood, like, no, 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 motherfuckers, like, you work for me, I don't work for you. And I think that that was sort of like a real problem that they had. And then when Ailes died, they were kind of left rudderless because they sort of had to sort of kiss the knee to Trump
Yeah, and the
in many ways.
Murdochs hate him,
They
don't
also
they?
had the Ashley Madison dump, and that was all the blackmail to tell them, from Russia, Likud, China, whomever, that we want Trump.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know that those things
Well,
were
it had a lot of military people in there, and back then, you supposedly, if you had an affair, you're supposed to go to jail. Remember, and they could be kicked out and lose their, uh, you know, honorary, discharge, whatever. And they were afraid of all that. I mean, you had just watched generals go down. Obama took out, uh, what's it, Flynn and the other one, and
well,
so they were.
Petraeus was like banging that woman Paula Broadwell,
That's
if you
right.
remember
So,
that. Yeah,
but
they
when they
basically.
did all this was judges that were in it. I downloaded the hack. I read
Yeah,
all
I
of
remember.
it.
I worked on it too. I actually wrote about it at the time. It was kind of dangerous to touch that thing, actually, back
I'm sure that it was, but I was dumb, dumb, dumb to stuff like that. But I downloaded it and I looked at everybody in town that I saw on there. My Alabama had the most, so it was like crazy bad.
Yeah, it was crazy to me just how few women there were actually on that. It was just like a giant compromise engine.
Well, wasn't it mainly for men? I mean, I know it advertised for both
No, I mean
sexes, but
there was just nobody on the actual platform. It was just a way of like, people said they wanted to have an affair, right? So they like load up their credit card, and then they'd use like their real address or their real email address, which is
they would use
hilarious.
their wives' email addresses, their wives' credit cards, their
Yeah, just
daughters, their
stupid
children.
shit.
It was
It's
sick.
like when
It was
Jerry
sick.
Springer got busted with a prostitute back in the day, and he had to do a commercial when he was running for mayor of
Yes.
Cincinnati. He goes, "One time I spent some time with a woman I shouldn't have, and I paid her with a check. I really wish I hadn't have done that." you know,
It was
sorry.
very Jerry Springer
Yeah,
read when you're reading it,
right.
but way worse, rated X, because the judge and the affairs that they would have with younger girls, the fantasies. I mean, it was pretty off the chart. It was pretty gross.
Pretty wild.
I knew so many. I mean, you don't understand. My town, it was lawyers, judges, YMCA managers. Like I'm talking, how of branches of all region. It was nuts, nuts,
Well, there's
nuts.
not as much stuff to do down there, maybe, and that's having.
We have the beach, people. We have a lot of shit to do down here. I don't know what you're talking about. We're not
I'm
freezing in the
kidding.
snow. We're in,
Hey,
we're like
it's that
no clothes
southern
and bathing suits and
it's the
having a
it's
great time on our
it's the,
boats and our
it's
jet
that's
skis.
yeah, it's that southern
That's right.
hospitality, Tom,
Yeah, we
don't you
have a
know?
great time down here.
That's
I don't know
right.
what you're talking about. We're not bored.
Too much
There's
too
no other
much of a
place
good
I'd rather
time.
I
live.
was really,
To be
trying
honest
to
with
pay
you.
that as a compliment. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, come on
Yeah.
down here. I'll show you a grand time. I promise you.
Maybe too much of a good time, Tom. Be careful.
Well, or like if you're in South Carolina, you do it in the back of a Cadillac on the first date.
Oh yeah, you guys saw that piece that I put up about Nikki Haley, and her her messing about. Yeah, apparently that's old hat in South Carolina politics. That's the big story there. Let's bring up Stadium. What's up,
Yeah,
Stadium?
I mean, you're talking about, the downfall of Fox. It's like, who are we going to replace them with? We got a plan? Like, is it going to be Sun News from Australia? Like, just taking over shop? Because it's like the same thing over there. You know what I mean?
I think it's just going to be straight up chaos, bro. I think that's what's going to be.
Well,
I
if
was
there's a
thinking-
vacuum, there's an opportunity here. You know what I mean?
Maybe there's just chaos. Maybe it's just a mob war.
Do you think with like the evolution of like it started with newspaper, then radio, then TV, and now it's like podcast? And what do you think will be the next? I remember the other day you were saying that you think Google Ads will be gone pretty soon for some reason or something like that. And then
Yeah, I think Google Ads has a lot of problems. Yeah, long term.
so I don't see how advertising for the normal folks is.
Yeah, I think most of these businesses like never really made that much money to begin with. And they sort of like would lie and say that they did. They'd lie to their advertisers about how many people were watching. I mean, do you really know anyone under like 45 that watches Fox News?
I know a ton of people.
No,
under
that's
45 who
why.
watch Fox
When I was
News.
watching the Super Bowl, I was like, who pays for all these ads and all this crap? And who still has cable TV or what it is? So it's like, that's why I was thinking like the Joe Rogan era is over. And like, I think there's going to be smaller podcasts and then more like Twitch streamers or lives like this, or who knows? I don't know how it's going to end up. But
Chuck,
Do y'all not know how Sinclair and all of that has dominated how mind
No, but
control on all of it?
Sinclair has a big problem. Like I knew.
Finally.
Yeah, I
But
knew
they
David
dominated
Smith.
forever.
Yeah, kind of. But I think like the U.S. government and the intelligence community and other things are putting a lot of pressure on these things. Like the Gawker attack basically bankrupted a lot of these. Basically set in motion how to bankrupt these things. And you look at Alex Jones, and he's like fucked 6 ways from Sunday.
True.
So I think that there's going to be a common strategy of bankrupting these things through lawfare.
Did you watch the James O'Keefe's 45-minute?
I did. I didn't know what to make of it. What do people think about it?
I'm a little. I mean, I'm no right winger by any stretch of the imagination, but there was something sad about this, and I don't follow him enough to understand any of it, other than just listening to him and knowing that I don't agree with. I mean, if he did something with Ashley Biden's laptop, which he's under investigation for, which I've read some of it, I know that there is some truth there, and then there might be not some truth there because we don't have everything that the indictment states.
We don't have the chain of custody either.
That's right. So I'm willing to keep my mind open to see what happens because I think that's how the law works, and I think that's the smart way to go.
Courtrooms are great places for doing fact finding. So for sure,
I love courtrooms. But the thing is, listening to him, he seemed to have presented himself like a lawyer would, or like how I would represent myself to the people that were my employees for the last 10 years. I'd say the same thing. I'd be like,
well, I spoke to John Garvey today, who's one of his board members, and John and I are in business and we're friends, going way back. And James and I were more friendly. A few years ago, we sort of had not kind of a falling out, but it was more like he wanted to go in one direction with his life and I wanted to go in another. And it was sort of like, how that happens with friends, right?
Yeah, it's called life.
Yeah, where you're just like, you're doing your thing, he's doing his thing. And then, he told me, I saw him like basically in the run up to the 2020 election, like I want to say it was like 2019, Christmas time, 2019. And he just seemed extremely exhausted and miserable with all the shit that he was going through. And so he and I were chatting, and I was like, listen, man, like, you don't have to do this anymore with your life. You know what I mean? Like, you can do something else. And he's like, well, all these people are depending on me for a paycheck. And I'm like, well, they'll find other jobs, right? Or they'll find other things to do. But I could tell that he was like really physically feeling it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was personal. I could tell. Yes.
It was personal, and it was all consuming, and I think what's happening is Matt Tierman is basically twisting the knife in on him. And Tierman is a weird kind of Sidney Riley figure. He's sort of like one of these guys who sort of bounce around the world, getting involved in all these weird politics in different places. I mean, got involved in Brazil. He's got involved in Poland. And, I just think all that stuff is very strange and very, like, not good for people.
So, but he's going to go start over, right? That's what he's saying.
So he says, but
or will he be able to if he goes? if he's in serious trouble. I mean, I don't know. Is he
I
in
mean,
serious trouble? Y'all
he
know
started
more than
an
I do.
organization. He started an organization 13 years ago, and in that today it has $22 million, that it has coming in, and there's a lot of, there's a lot of weird people who've given him money over the years in different forms and fashions over the years, backing him. But he has an emotional relationship with a lot of these donors, and I don't know, he keeps, because of the nature of how he funds his work and how many millions of dollars they raise, he has to kind of make all of his stories be like major, huge, exclusive. He always sexes up his stories, and I think that actually undermines a lot of the work that he does. Like not everything he does is like a grand slam. You know what I mean? So
Yes, makes sense.
that's kind of my complaint about it. And I actually think he did better stuff when it was on a shoestring budget, because it actually had to be more clever and more interesting. But people get older, and if you do anything for 13 years, it's kind of a crazy thing to do anything for 13 years. I think you should really reinvent yourself every 7 to 8 years. I think that's why people have sabbaticals, and
That's true. I agree with that.
I think it can be quite dangerous for you.
Well, people can own you, and then you're a puppet. You become controlled and owned instead of your uniqueness of how you got there in the first place.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people who own jobs rather than own businesses, and a 501c3 is owning a job, like a nonprofit and all of that.
Ooh, I would think it's even harder.
Yeah, for sure it's harder. And I would see him over time, and every time I saw him, he looked like he'd aged like 5 or 6 years from the time I saw him previously. But he's in pretty good shape physically, but like it's all in the eyes and in the face,
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes.
I got the first intro to your rap battle, Charles. It's gonna go. when we hear Stu, the crowd goes boo. That's your intro, and then you can take it from there. I don't have anything else.
Thank you. Thank you. I think it's good that neither you nor I, Stadium, entered into a career in rap. I think we saved everyone the indignity of that.
Well, rap aren't just black people, by the way.
That was the joke, Dana.
Okay. I know, but earlier you said it to a guy, and I was like, "Oh, it's not just black people."
No, of course not. But like that was if you look at his video of him rapping, he's like,
he's stupid. Yeah,
he's like wearing all this stuff. I mean, it's hilarious. It's hilarious on some level, but it's also deeply disturbed, and he's clearly not a well person. Like somebody who would do that is like not well.
He definitely wore a lot of FUBU back in the day.
So is he from Canada? I mean, didn't y'all say that he was from Canada?
I'd heard that, and then I read up on some stuff, and I didn't find that. But
okay, because I was going to say, if he's from Canada, you should have taken him down with that. I would have.
I thought,
get the fuck out of our country.
You got to go.
So over these people coming into our country and then telling us, and I'm like, get the fuck out.
Yeah. Dana is in favor of forced deportations in some cases.
She's more in favor of just having them shut the fuck up, which I could get behind.
Shut them down and ship them out.
You sounding like a conservative.
Well,
I live in Alabama. I can't not be too crazy.
Listen, I'll take it a step further. I want Palmer Raid 2.0. I want the commies. I want the crazies. Deport them, and then we'll decide it later.
My ex-mother-in-law was disappointed that she couldn't join the deportation squads after Trump was elected. She's an immigrant, from Indonesia. There's a lot of people who wanted Trump to go full bore on this stuff, right? And had lists of people ready to go. So I'm with you, Prodigal. And by the way, I think we're closer to get that under Joe Biden than we would be under Donald Trump.
That Schumer's speech in front of Congress inspired that amount of confidence.
I'm not a Schumer fan. I think Schumer's the worst. That's why I wanted my girl AOC to take him down.
Schumer needs to go down for sure. I mean, I know that people on my left don't get it, but he's. Woof.
I mean, if your daughter,
you can't be in New York, it might have been bad.
What does Schumer even believe? I mean, I'm from the area. I've seen his career for this guy. At least with some on the left, you can tell who really believes what they're saying, right? And listen, this is a problem on the right too, right? We have our Grahams, we have our Scotts, we have everybody, but Schumer is just. I look at him and I think he'd say anything for power.
Well, I mean, his kids work for tech companies, for major tech companies, and get
Facebook.
paid millions of dollars a year. I think one works for Facebook and one works for Google.
And he would never bring Facebook to the floor so that
Mhm.
Democrats or anybody could have a debate on what Facebook was doing with Cambridge Analytica because his daughter was working there. And that was bullshit. Because that's all
100%.
of us being affected. I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican. Corruption needs to be exposed regardless.
I think there's something kind of dangerous where you just have like these people who are super old senators who just keep being in these positions where they just kind of keep going on and on and on. I think it's different with president because you only get 8 years. You only get 8 years. So like, however you feel about Joe Biden, time is always ticking with him. But like, he's either gonna die, right, or he's gonna be out and like he's gonna lose re-election, or he'll be out in like 6 years, whatever happens, right? But like Dianne Feinstein, Charles Grassley, they can be there for literally until they die, and it's kind of crazy.
Totally agree.
Maybe we should blame the voters for this, okay. But I don't know, man. He's allowed a lot of people to go work for him over the years.
Why don't you like Grassley? He has a lot of Russian connections. I mean,
I think the Russia stuff is overstated, Dana. But
I have the information.
I think the Barbara Ladine.
I'll send it to you.
The Barbara Ladine stuff is disturbing.
It's even more than that. It's the same people that Rudy Giuliani was hanging out with.
I just know that like I've spoken to Grassley, like I've talked to him, like me talking to him, and the guy is not home. Like, and I say this as like, people who love him should just take him and be like, come on, man, like let's sit this one out. You know what I mean? It's kind of sad. It's sad how some of these people like don't really get taken care of all that well, but you can't really do that much damage when you're a U.S. senator. But still, the Barbara Ladine stuff was disturbing to me. The degree to which he basically allowed her to run all of his like interviewing of people and all the rest of it, and she's pretty obviously some kind of weird Israeli spy.
100%.
Nope. Sorry, I hit my fat fingers hit the mute everyone button. But yeah, she's 100% some kind of spy. Let's go to Dcast or to Europa, Destiny, or Andrew, because we haven't heard from them as yet.
Yeah, I'll what happened with the Stu Peters Space?
I mean, do you want to recap it, Tom? Maybe they'd be.
Yeah, I think Charles was trying to have a conversation with that space about, there was a lot of foreign entanglements that were there that day, and that, hey, AI or the facial recognition, Clearview AI had helped identify a lot of the people that ended up getting arrested. It also helped keep some people from getting arrested that were going to be arrested. And Charles said, hey, we should have all the footage out, but just keep in mind, with all the footage out, that can all be run through Clearview AI, and probably more people will go to prison because of that. And Stu Peters started going with the line, this democracy's fake and this country's shit. And we've got Matt Gaetz is basically like a coward because there's nothing to prove that he got any type of concessions from McCarthy and all of these political leaders. The people need to rise up, and we're going to go arrest politicians and just some crazy shit. And it was in a real aggressive tone, trying to whip the room up. And Charles basically kind of called him out. He absolutely called him out for what he was doing, and then that's when the shit went crazy.
Yeah, I remember Stu Peters. Do you guys know that AFPAC event that Nick Fuentes holds at all?
Yeah, kind of vaguely. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, he said something to the effect that we should kill Dr. Fauci. And I remember that Fuentes and really all of the Groypers just started attacking him after that. And I don't know. I just think that Stu Peters, he's a very weird guy, and I think he's part of the kind of the weird MAGA people. And I don't know.
Just watch that video. Watch that video of him rapping. I mean, it speaks for itself.
I saw that. Yeah.
He's
Yeah,
a
he was
documented wife beater, a drunk,
yeah.
had multiple run-ins with the police. I
And
mean,
now he's grifting off of 85-year-old whites. So
yeah, it's just kind of sad, he's like taking
yeah,
advantage of these people.
yeah,
And I don't know, like maybe I got through to some people. I have people like messaging me about that space, and
yeah,
I just don't respect people who. So for one, like I'm by nature somewhat pacifistic. Like I like reason and debate and science and technology, but like I'm not going to run from a fight either. Like I'm not a coward or whatever.
yeah,
So where these like two guys were tag teaming me in the thing, and I was like, "All right, come on over, pussy. Like let's roll." And they didn't know what to deal with that reaction. I was like, "Yeah, come on over. Like I'll give you my address. Come on over. I got my guns. Let's go."
yeah.
And and they
You
didn't
didn't
know.
say guns, but you said, "Come on over here." Like, I'll
Yeah, I
give you
didn't say
my
my guns. Yeah, but that was what I was thinking. I was like, hope they break in. Like it'd be great. But I don't want to like harm any of these people. I just want to like sit them down and talk to them about like what's wrong with them. And of
And
course,
you did call him a pussy. That's for
yeah, I
sure.
did call him a pussy. That's
You had
true.
a nice
That's
you had
true.
a
I did
nice
call.
delivery with the way that you called him a pussy. I wanted to say
100%.
What
I was like,
what did I
Charles knows how to do this the
what
right
did I
way. I
say to
don't
him?
know how to
I
do
didn't
it.
I didn't of course like my ex-wife comes into the room right when I'm calling this guy a pussy, right? And I'm like sitting there and it's like my little daughter's like in the other room, I'm 6 years old, and I'm like looking at her and I'm like, yeah, don't use those words. Like
Yeah, I
I put
just
it on.
came in because I was on the dark web, and there's an open contract on you. What happened?
Oh, it'd be great. It'd be great if there were an open contract on me. But I don't know. I mean, these guys are kind of silly.
You're worth 10 million or 100 kilos of fentanyl. So I'm trying to debate if I want to.
Well, you could get some real money for those
Prodigal,
kilos
you
of
could
fentanyl.
negotiate a better deal. Tell him to get those numbers up.
Yeah, those are rookie numbers.
Did he host his own space, or was this somewhere else? And what was it entitled? It was about
was
COVID?
like Noel Fritch's National File Space. It was like, it's like I'm just so tired of these people like being like, hey, we should go have an uprising. We should go overthrow the government.
Can I ask you something about that? Because
it's like you first, pussy.
My favorite
Like,
part
go
at the
ahead.
end is when you.
But Chuck, I'm confused about one thing because you mentioned that
Well,
O'Keefe
let
being.
Decaf speak and then
I was just saying, my favorite part at the end is when you got kicked out. They're like, "See, he's the problem. They get mad when we want to fight for our rights," and I was just like, "God, you guys fucking."
Sounds good to me.
Go ahead, Particle. I just thought those guys were idiots.
Yeah, I'm curious. Why would O'Keefe be in more trouble than National File? To my understanding, for the Ashley Biden diary, somebody offered it to them for money, and he turned it down and informed the FBI. But it was National File who ended up publishing it, correct?
Yeah, I think what happened was somebody within Veritas leaked it or some shit. I don't know fully, because I've talked to Noel Fritch about it, and I don't know that he's really giving me the full skinny on it. But my understanding is that the Ashley Biden thing is a fake because to look at the $22 million that have come there from various donors, some of whom have like foreign connections, and then of course he's tied in with Eric Prince, and Eric Prince is of course tied in with the Emiratis. So there's the question of like whether or not foreign governments are interfering in our elections by using the nonprofits like O'Keefe's outfit. That's, I think, what's really going on. If you ask my honest assessment.
Yeah, I don't know enough, so I haven't really been commenting. I think he's going to be fine either way. I mean, didn't he his social media following just surpassed the Veritas account? I think he'll be fine either way.
I don't know. Like James is. I've seen James come back from various things in my life. I've also seen him like he gets really sensitive, and sometimes he doesn't come back as easily,
I mean, I never liked the organization's title. To be honest with you, whenever I hear Veritas, I think of Bill Cooper, and he owns that title.
Well, whenever I hear Veritas, I think of the Harvard motto, and I think, fuck that. I don't want to be associated with that degenerate place. So
I have a question. Was he part of do you remember when the FBI raided, I think it was in Boston, a home down in its basement that had real baby fetuses in jars?
No, that's not him. That's something else.
What ended up happening with that case?
I don't know.
Because that was really bizarre. They handcuffed, a girl and a guy, and it was supposed to be attached to the Supreme Court justice somehow.
I don't
What I
know.
found more interesting was all the Harvard and MIT. Well, it was definitely Harvard. I know scientists who were involved with transferring biomedical research over to China. Some of them got off under Biden. That's pretty nice of your president, Chuck.
Well, it wasn't the president; it was the courts that were letting him go. I mean,
He doesn't own Garland. He doesn't basically the
no.
DOJ
It
is
wasn't.
completely weaponized.
It wasn't the DOJ that was letting him go. It was there were actual court cases that were happening, and the juries were basically nullifying these things, saying it was like racist against the Chinese somehow. Crazy stuff. Yeah, I followed one of those things. Although they jailed Lieber, they jailed Charles Lieber, who was putting a lot of research out, and I think there's this hope. There's this hope that we can do all this counterintelligence shit. There's this hope that we can do all of this stuff. No, it wasn't David Daleidon's thing, Mason. It was something else. There's this hope that we can do all this stuff with the courts or whatever. And I just don't think that that's true. Like, I think a lot of counterintelligence stuff kind of just doesn't work that way.
Well,
Let's go
Charles
Listen, the
Lieber
courts are
also
scared.
got $2 million from Wahoo Institute.
From who?
The Wahoo University or Institute, whatever that place was. They paid him.
Who did? Lieber?
That Charles Lieber.
Yeah. He was up to no good. He was up to no good.
That's what
He
I
was
thought.
he was up to no good for such a long time that it was kind of crazy. He was like kind of thumbing his nose at people. And there's a lot of this at every one of these institutions. There's like one or two or three Charles Liebers.
Sure.
And not all of them are Chinese,
No, not at all.
But I'm curious, Chuck, because you tend to champion the intelligence community and other stuff. So, you're aware in the early 2010s when the Chinese basically obliterated all CIA assets in China, right?
Yeah, those were some of my friends.
And just out of curiosity, that was around the same time Clinton had her server and was getting confidential information there. I mean, they've never connected the dots, but I'm just curious. I mean, where do you think they got all that information from?
Oh, I mean, they hacked our PPO office. That was a big part of it. The PPO thing was the best thing that ever happened to me personally, because when I applied to work for the U.S. government, the PPO basically I got rejected on my first attempt, and then when the PPO office happened, it was like affirmative action.
So you think Clinton's servers had nothing to do with that?
No,
I mean, there's more evidence that our intelligence assets were killed due to her servers than from WikiLeaks. I'm just curious.
No, it's not. It's neither. It's neither nor. It's the PPO servers. They hack. What they do is they hack the payroll systems. They hack all these
Dude, it was a known fact. China, Germany, and Russia hacked her fucking servers. Like this has been known.
But like that's not why those people were getting whacked, dude. They were getting whacked.
Well, if they're whacked by the Chinese and
the Chinese have 100 billion photos of everybody on the planet. Just like think about that. And they collected a lot of people's DNA during the COVID testing.
Yeah, that's a different subject. I'm talking about like 10, 15 years ago. They basically set back our gathering.
No. They've been doing
China
this.
fucking decades.
No. They've been doing this for years. They've been so good at sweeping our people that like we just use satellites now pretty much. Like our people get hunted down there in such an aggressive manner that it's pretty crazy. And they're starting to hunt them down in other countries too.
I mean, don't you think we should at least repay the favor, right? You treat somebody how they treat you, no?
We are in some countries. You don't hear too much about Chinese people being treated well in Africa these days.
Blinken is kind of saying, I mean, that was what that paper article was about yesterday. He was giving a heads up to China, right?
Yeah, which is one of the stupid moves ever. I mean, he basically said we did this on the low to delay it, and we're going to meet with China. We want to send them a message.
I kind of feel like Blinken was doing it because this was time for them to put. He did it on purpose. It's not that he was trying to. We're in charge. He's letting them know. Look, we got this.
Do you feel in charge, Dana? I don't feel in charge.
No, it's all about the OPM hack. Sorry, it wasn't the PPO hack. It was the OPM hack. And the OPM hack was targeted by China in basically 2014 was when it went down, in April 2014. And when that happened, there were shitloads of people who were in that database who got fucked. And it was actually one of the best things that ever happened to people like me because the government stopped building those databases of known folks.
What would you like to see happen, Prodigal? I mean, what do you see that you're not happy with? Because, I mean, you're smart, and I always like to hear what you have to say, whether I agree with you, but I do
I'm
know
just
that you're
looking for an
smart.
off ramp on Ukraine. I mean, listen, I'm no fan of China. I'm no fan of. All I care about is America. Like, I'll be blunt. This is the only place I have to go. But
I'm about the same way. I'm
yeah,
getting there myself.
but we're not in a position to deal with we're putting ourselves in a position that if China makes a move on Taiwan, we are stretched thin. Like we need a
So
couple more years. Japan
so,
is going to start building up their military. India, yeah, they're non-aligned, but when it comes to China, they're with us. We can focus on we're not in a position to be doing we look at the manufacturing we're bringing. Like we haven't brought back strategic industries. Like yeah, they're pursuing green tech, but we haven't brought back pharmaceutical. We haven't brought back a lot of other manufacturing we need. Like this is. I just don't understand their strategy long term. I don't understand.
That's first of all, a lot of that stuff is just starting now because this is the first year of the Inflation Reduction Act. So that's sort of thing one to know. And of course, there's set asides in that to help people restore from.
They're not talking about it, Chuck. I know it's in the Inflation, the Infrastructure Act. We should have bought pharmaceuticals back to Puerto Rico years ago because that's where they used to be based before we fucking exported everything out of the territories in the country.
I mean, maybe, but it's happening. I mean, I can tell you that there are various deals that I've been doing and others have been doing since that went down.
And it's going to take a year or two. My point is, if we ratchet up tensions right now, we're not. Listen, even down to military recruiting, we are in a very bad situation.
I don't agree with that at all. I think we have way too many soldiers and we need way fewer of them.
Not if we potentially enter into kinetic conflict with
I don't think
two world powers.
So I don't think we're going to end up in kinetic conflict with Taiwan. I mean, I think Taiwan already belongs to China. Just at a practical level, Anyone who's been to Taiwan knows that I'm speaking the truth.
But my point is, if that happens, right? Even hypothetically,
if there's a lot of these things where it's always hypothetical. This could happen. That could happen. That could whatever. I look at just these things this is very simple, right? We were told that the Ukrainian government would fall, right? It has not fallen, right? We were also told that the Afghanistan army could stand up and defend itself. It didn't happen. So I just look at what's actually going on, and what's actually going on is the targeting and the killing of the Russians is getting way better over time with all the resources we have there. And increasingly, Zelensky.
But China's also getting all that information. This is when it comes to China. Overall, this hurts us, right? They're getting all the real-time data. They're using the DJI drones.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, they're basically getting to sit back and see Western tactics and machinery against a modern army and power, and calculate that in regards to. Listen, I don't think they're going to necessarily move on Taiwan, but
everybody right now is studying what's going on in Taiwan. Everybody, it's a place where people are trying out new weapons. I myself have 4 companies that are deployed there. So yeah, I agree with you. It's a real problem. I think China has a lot of strengths over us. They have the DJI drones, which I tried to ban. And then Bill Barr targeted Matt Gaetz over that. And I've written about that. People know my views on the DJI drones. I mean, I've been on some of these things for a long time, but I think you underestimate just how fast the United States can move when it's really threatened. And actually, Loading makes a point about the U.S. aircraft carriers outnumber China's 10-3. I actually don't think it's really about aircraft carriers. I think it's about we have a huge satellite infrastructure that the Chinese don't have. We're very good at targeting things as a result of that infrastructure. And then we also have the submarine capabilities that are world-renowned, and the Chinese don't really have that in any meaningful way.
Certainly and then doesn't Netanyahu have
well, they did steal recently the Russian plans. I mean, Russia has a pretty.
They steal shit all the time. The problem is
no, but they've stolen some pretty advanced plans. I'm not sure what they've stolen from the West.
The Chinese steal shit all the time, right? That's obvious, right? That's being Chinese, right? If anyone who's sat next to a Chinese kid in math class, knows what 100%. I'm talking about. The problem isn't that they steal shit. The problem is that they oftentimes don't know how to use the shit they've stolen. And that's where we have a lot of advantages.
Yeah, but Chuck, you don't see that changing. I mean, if you look at some of the
what's happened,
it's clear China. You look at what they're focused on strategically is they're relying on AI to overcome any lack of innovation their system of government and education causes there domestically. And it's working. If you look at advances in fusion, pharmaceuticals, other industries, this
I'm
is what
more
they're going.
afraid of Israel than I am China.
Yeah, me too, actually. Well, certainly Netanyahu.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm talking about, and what he has on us on the backdoor chips.
Well, because
and the
he's so fucking dangerous.
He's
I mean, the worst
extremely
thing Israel can do
dangerous.
is blow up the Middle East. China.
No, not at all. The Israelis routinely assassinate people in the United States. They routinely cause mischief here. They routinely allow hacking here. No. The Netanyahu Israelis are extremely dangerous. And
they can take us all out.
Yeah,
we can't forget that our wonderful former president let off an Israeli spy in Jonathan Pollard.
Yes, of course.
Well,
Jonathan Pollard.
It was his time up.
Well, not just Jonathan Pollard, but he also pardoned Avril Sella, who was his handler. Thank you.
Well, didn't Jared tell him to? He had to.
Well, he didn't have to do shit.
Well, I mean, if Jared said so, he sort of had to.
I mean, it's so crazy. The fact that we had Jared Kushner as president for 4 years is just deeply hilarious.
Listen, he might be gay, but he's still married to Ivanka, and I think she's beautiful.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's always, this is what I think Loading puts it best. Stealing a design is one thing, but actually getting it to work is a whole other thing. So, we still have very good engineering in this country and in other countries. So the other thing too, people forget this, but there's a whole lot of Americans who for years would go over to China and they get paid 3x or even sometimes 4 or 5x their salary and help the Chinese on the tech transfer. And that shit just doesn't happen anywhere near like it used to.
Silicon Valley. They went through, what is the name of the university? The TSH.
Sung Shua. Yeah.
Yeah, they were all on the board and we're talking the worst of the worst.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's the other way around, Chuck. I mean, if you look at the American universities and their foreign students, which even a lot of the elite public universities, if you look at the UCs or Michigan, etc., you look at the bulk of them, they're from China, Chuck. They've done the opposite. If you looked at the Chinese scientists, you had 1,400 switch over in the last year, and they literally just passed us on the innovation metrics, and they have no rail guards on blockchain, on AI, on any of this shit. China, to me, their focus is clear.
Were you ever concerned about Elaine Chao and her position?
I think China's not as concerned as the population decline as some people may think, because if you look at the U.S. and just the advances you've seen in industry, and whole workforce is being eliminated, right? As more stuff becomes basically
I mean, look, I've dealt with the Chinese in several different categories. They're pretty good competitors, but they try to basically infest our satellite infrastructure. We kick them out. We're kicking them out of our genetics infrastructure now. I mean, these things take time. These things don't pivot on a dime. But I
think between Jared Kushner and Elaine Chao, with the power that they had, was pretty fucking dangerous.
Elaine Chao is a piece of shit. I mean, Mitch McConnell.
Well, but she's had a lot of power for how many years and how many presidents?
Yeah, don't forget about Jim Breyer. I mean, Jim Breyer's connections are insane, and this is all within the McConnell family.
Board.
His sister-in-law is a director for the Bank of China.
That's right.
Angela Chao
was in Trump Tower.
Angela Chao is his wife, right? And Angela Chao,
her sister.
Yep, and of course, if you go to Harvard Business School, the Chao Center.
They have the whole business school building.
But the thing that's interesting to me is, you know what they do is, they're a big part of shipping all the fentanyl into the United States. It's on the.
That's right.
It's
and
on
cocaine.
Their ships. Yeah, mostly it's the fentanyl on their ships.
Sure.
Shit, disavow. I'm not getting sued by Jim Breyer over this.
No. I mean, it's 100%. And by the way, Jim Breyer knows me. Yeah, and he's frightened by me. Just to be clear about it, because he knows that I have some receipts on him.
Because he said he'd cut you, he'd shiv you. What are you saying, Jim Breyer?
We met in Austin about 2 years ago, and we were talking about facial recognition or whatever. And I was like, well, I don't do business with traitors. And I just looked at him right in the eye in his own home in Austin, no less. So he's not a fan of mine.
And well, he's invested heavily in a surveillance crypto tech that the CCP is involved with. He's heavily involved in VeChain. Well, I always look at his crypto project. He has Circle, he's got VeChain.
Yeah, but none of that shit works. I mean, it's all just money laundering. None of his tech works.
And then her dad is the second largest shipping in China.
Well, that's the problem.
But Chuck, all that matters is who's invested in it, right? He's invested in it. You got 3 of the big 4 accounting firms. You got DNVGL, or DNVG now it's called. You got the UN. You got Microsoft. They're backed by some very big players who I don't
So why
necessarily
aren't you
like.
happy with Biden? We got all those pieces of shit out. You should love this,
a lot of
Prodigal.
those people have gone down. Hold up, let's go to Ben real quick, because Ben had his hand up. Go ahead, Ben, if you have something you want to say. If not, we'll go to Richard and see if Richard has anything fun to say.
No, I'm good right now. I was actually, when you said PPO, I was going to interrupt or correct OPM, but you already did.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, thanks. No, I was thinking
Yeah,
PPO
Ben, don't address this anti-Semite. You see how he talks about your people?
Yeah, whose people?
Well, no, Charles, there was actually something else I was going to ask about.
Ben's a black
OPM.
Jew. You didn't know that? We're infiltrated. We got you.
He's a convert. And by the way,
question
I've got
about
nothing
the
against
OPM
Jews.
thing. You said that after that happened, some of the sort of systems that were used to, like, gather or store that information, no longer were being built, or there were some sort of changes made. Was there any good reporting on that, or is this just sort of like things that you've heard?
No, I mean, I know that that's happened. I don't know if there's any writing on this.
Yeah, it's called the chuckjohnson.substack.com.
No,
I'll check that out. No,
this is one of those things I literally haven't written about because I don't know if I'm allowed to or not. It's like one of those.
Yeah, I mean, I found it interesting that there was no real coverage after the coverage that just said it had happened, and I was sort of curious because, it sounded like it was a lot of personnel data of current employees or former employees, but I couldn't tell. Like, it was unclear whether it included information like applications for security clearance for people who didn't get it.
No, so it did not include people who were not allowed into the government.
Interesting.
That's sort of the thing that became quite interesting about it.
Huh.
And what happened was there are a whole bunch
That's
of people,
funny.
there are a whole lot of people who became irregulars as a result of that. And so I think there's going to be a lot more irregular espionage than there has been in the past.
Huh. Yeah. I mean, I think hearing that happened would make a lot of people say, you know what? Like, if they were on the fence about government work, they would just be like, thanks, but no thanks.
Well, there's a lot of people that are in, like, what we might call, like, the formal and informal government. And the informal government is just growing by leaps and bounds every year. So a lot of those people probably wouldn't necessarily want to work in the government anyway.
Take it back.
And by the way, I don't think that having a security clearance is actually, like, all that good. As somebody who's once had one, it's actually, like, kind of nerve-wracking.
In what ways? I mean, the process, it sounds shitty, but actually
you have to report every foreign contact you have with people, and, like,
so you mean like the ongoing reporting obligations become really?
Yes, and I literally don't know a lot of the time. Like, I'll meet somebody in Costco, like,
right.
I go to Costco and I'll run into somebody from the embassy, and then
every time you travel, right? Like, you make a new friend. Like, is that reportable or not? What if it's really just a friend? What if it's like
no? So what ends up happening is you basically create this paper trail where people can fuck you up in all these. It
sounds awful. It sounds like they can. I mean, it sounds like you can get yourself into some thorny situations simply by failing to report well.
The other problem too is, like, most of the spies that people send at you are U.S. citizens, and so you're in this sort of weird situation where, like, do you report this, like, white person that who, like, that his wife's money comes from China? Like, how do you deal with that, right? So it's like there's a whole lot of, like, spying that goes on that's done by, like, normal Americans against other Americans on behalf of foreign countries. And don't even get me started on the Israeli part of it, because it's very difficult.
I'm sure Jared Kushner did a really good job telling and
very difficult.
What all he did.
How so? I mean, it sounds. I mean, maybe it's just because I follow you already, but it sounds like. I mean, how different than, say, like? Do you mean just like you think the scale of it is different?
The Israelis make it so that some of their Israeli citizens, they actually don't disclose if they're actually Israeli citizens. So you have a situation where you'll meet Jewish Americans who are, like, friendly, nice, interested in your tech, whatever, and then you'll discover, like, 4 or 5 years after you met them that they made Aliyah, like, 9 years ago, and so they were undercover when they talked to you. There's a lot of that kind of shit that goes down.
I mean,
that's shockingly common, by the way.
I mean, I'm not actually disputing whether that happens. I mean, I could see someone who made Aliyah, like, not necessarily disclosing that in their work.
No. They're not allowed to do it if they do work in the U.S. or in some key countries. So they don't. They have you come over, and then you're like, oh, I'm going to be an Israeli, and then they have you not disclose that if you're young enough, and that you have to do your obligatory military service.
What are you saying about the Manuel family?
Well, the Emmanuel family is a great example of that, but like probably they're actually like too obvious. But there are many examples of that I could point you to, even in personal cases, where people will come over, they'll go to Israel when they're like teens, right? They'll go with their parents or whatever. They'll do like 2 or 3 years. They'll be American, like raised in America, American pop culture, all that. And then it won't be disclosed, right? They'll come under a different cover, different identity, what have you.
But when you say don't mean disclosed, I mean you're referring to like people who are working for a government not disclosing that they're an Israeli. So you're not talking about like, because there are people in like our regular lives who have multiple passports, and you don't always know. That's sort of a separate thing that maybe you can criticize too. Right?
That's a whole other aspect of it too. Yeah. So what ends up happening is you're in this situation where you encounter all these people at all times. And particularly if you live in like Northern Virginia, as I do, you encounter all these people, you have dinner with them, they come over, just like social ties, right? And so you have to like constantly report all of those contacts all the time to the best of your ability. And the problem is like if they're very good, then you don't even know,
Or if they just don't tell you, right?
Well, you just don't know a lot of the time. Like you suspect shit.
And what are you going to do? You can't run around asking everyone you meet what their citizenships are. Like that's not.
And in fact, like you can't. It's illegal in some places of employment. You actually can't.
I mean, it can constitute national origin discrimination.
Yep. So you're
actually
trapped.
Could.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in like a.
No. I made this very argument when the U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee was asking me for all my connections.
It could very legitimately constitute national origin discrimination, like not like as a gotcha, but as actual national origin discrimination.
In my case,
imagine asking every Chinese person if they have Chinese citizenship. Like that's not.
In my case, So in my case, on the Russian side of it, it's something like I think it's like 1 in 70 people in America have Russian. And then what do you do with Russian Jews? What do you do for like? I had a friend who like he's a Jew from Tashkent, and it's like, well, when he was born, it was part of.
I don't know where that is. Where is Tashkent?
Tashkent is in Uzbekistan.
Okay.
So like when he was born, it was part of Russia, but like it's obviously not a part of Russia now. But he's obviously not a part of Uzbekistan or whatever. So there's a lot of this stuff that goes on that like gets very complicated very quickly. And so my attitude was just like, screw it. If you want my help, I'll help the government. I'm patriotically minded, but I'm not going to like record all of my conversations with every single person.
You're not going to make your life miserable. And I mean, honestly, like, why should you?
No, and the problem is that it's designed to entrap you, right? Because people will be like, oh, he didn't include this foreign contact. And it's like...
It's designed to discourage some perfectly capable people of wanting anything to do with supporting their country.
Correct. Yeah.
Like, this doesn't sound appealing to most intelligent people who want to enjoy their day-to-day lives.
No,
and this is a problem that is like not really being addressed.
No, it's a huge problem.
Even just look at the application to get a security clearance. This thing is like dozens and dozens and dozens of pages. And I've looked at it, fairly recently, actually. It's the sort of thing that if you're not aware of what the process entails when you're 16 or 18 years old, by the time you discover that the process exists, it's in itself discouraging. And you only wonder what sort of people are not going forward with the process just because of the deeply discouraging nature of it. I mean, I can think if I were to show this to 100 people who would be qualified, right, or who are patriotic, or who are highly intelligent, I think probably 95 of the 100 would laugh and throw it in the garbage and say, like,
so when the agency
I'm going to go be a lawyer
somewhere, when you were 15,
I'm going to go be a doctor, whatever.
What were you doing?
Just never do it again. Sorry, Prodigal, I missed that.
So what they do?
I said when the agency reached out to you when you were 15, what were you doing?
So what they do is they have dispensations that they use, but and then of course the truth of the matter is that like no one actually fills out all the paperwork because it's impossible to. So
what happens in practice?
Everyone kind of always.
Well, if you're Carter Page, you assist the CIA, then the FBI fucks you over with the DOJ, and people like Chuck defend them.
Well, no, I didn't defend that. I actually defended Carter Page.
Carter Page was a great guy.
But
He
Carter
got really
Page
screwed over,
Carter Page did a lot of stupid shit, and it just on a practical basis.
but was a good guy.
Yeah, but like he was a pussy, and like he organized his affairs in a sloppy manner.
Take it back.
Yeah, that's what you get when you get a guy from Poughkeepsie.
But he was also outed, which was pretty
He was
dangerous
outed.
for our
He
country.
was outed, but he was also like he was so obviously CIA at everything that he did that he was sort of like he's like,
Yeah,
oh,
but they
Well, we
admitted
still
it. The
don't need that
problem
to
is the
happen in
CIA.
our country.
Yeah, do you understand? Chuck, you know what happened, right? They sent out saying, "Hey, does Carter Page work with any agencies or any assets?" CIA said, "Yes, he's been an asset for us." They changed the email to say no, to try to
I'm sure
say,
Charles were well aware of that,
No,
right?
he was under a FISA
but he's
warrant.
sort
They
of
can't, no
glossing
one
over
could
it,
know
no?
that.
This is a guy who assisted his government, and then his government fucked
So
him over.
That's
Yeah,
right.
but that's kind of the point, Prodigal.
I met Carter
it's so
Page.
obvious.
Okay,
Was
wait.
the lie really a lie?
I met Carter Page, and like everything
it back.
about the dude screams CIA. Like you don't think the Russians like what do you think like the Russians are? Like they're the masters at this game. Like they had him pegged like 6 ways from Sunday. And
Like
so
when Kevin Kleinsmith chose to change that email to say from not a source for the CIA to or that from saying that he was a source to that he was not, right? Like on some level, there were other people involved who knew he was lying. It's kind of why Kevin Kleinsmith got off easy, because he was lying in writing, but he wasn't misleading
Yeah, he lost
other
his
people.
license
They
for
all
what,
knew
like a
he was
month?
lying.
Yeah, that's my point. He
Right.
lost his license for a month, right? Or was
Right.
it a
Yeah,
year?
it's ridiculous.
It was
It was
like
the
a
biggest
month, I
like
think. It
nothing
wasn't even
burger.
a full year.
It was a slap on the wrist.
I mean, he was never really ever going to get punished anyway.
That's
Right.
right.
Because he's a click shot.
Because the FBI and the CIA are at war with each other.
So that's what really needs to be discussed.
Well, I mean, they're big parts of the government. They're at war with each other, and the NSA and GCHQ have like clearly hacked the FBI's database.
Well, I'll
like,
never forget
all
John
these corrupt.
Schindler. John Schindler told me that it was the FBI, so he was kind of right, even though he's a piece of shit. He was right.
I just know, like, I've met a lot of NSA people over the years, right? And
Yeah, I bet you have.
they hate the FBI.
They hate him.
They hate him.
Why?
They hate him more than they hate a lot of foreign governments.
Charles, what are the biggest?
Is
What are
it
their
because
biggest?
they do all the work on the outside, and then when they're like
they don't
giving
like
the information, they fuck it all up once
well,
it gets
because
here?
the house people don't like the field people. You know.
Well,
Is
if
it
they're
really? Is it that
compromised all
simple
in
and
New
tribal,
York,
or
which
are
we
there
all know
some?
that
I
doesn't
see what you did
work.
there with that analogy.
I mean, well, they're all slaves, right, on some form. No, I mean, like the people who are in the house doing analysis and getting like wiretaps and listening on people's phones and all that shit. Those people don't like the people who are out there like working the field and meeting agents and human beings. They don't like each other. They don't trust each
most
other.
of NSA
And then of course,
is autistic.
there's the facts that like a lot of DEA agents, a lot of FBI agents are on the take of different countries, cartels, whatever, because they're they fall in love with sources, they fuck sources.
Well, they're also spies as well.
Yeah, but like the FBI to a lot of these people are amateurs, and that's how that goes.
So you're saying the NSA?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was.
amateurs.
That's kind of what I was getting at when I asked if it was tribal. Is it the FBI?
Yeah,
Or just
look,
seems like
it's
the dumb jocks.
You go and you work at the NSA, and you're like smart, okay? Like
Sure.
You worked hard. You're probably technical, and then you meet the FBI people, and they're all like,
and they're like the bros who were like not nice to you in high school.
Well, they have law degrees.
Some of them do, but few of them do actually. Dan.
It's not that hard to get a law degree. It's not. If anybody
that too, 80 or 90% of the lawyers are stupid.
I mean, I get what you're saying.
That's why we have appellate courts. That's entirely.
They work for you. You should be talking to your lawyer like he's your bitch. That's my advice.
100%. I always tell people that.
I agree with that fully.
I always say to people when they hire lawyers, no, you're the pimp, they're the John. Like that's what I always say to them.
Everybody works for you. Your doctor, you just got to put it back in.
If you're very intelligent or doing anything complex, you're at an epistemic advantage to your lawyer.
If you pay somebody, they work
for
you.
Relax with the epistemic. It's 3 o'clock, Ben. Come on.
No, it's more than that. It's actually more than that. It's what you have in the FBI and the CIA and the NSA is you have these turf wars that are, and the landscape is constantly changing because of technology. and because of like cultural mores and what's basically things are changing constantly.
Plus,
And
we're a melting pot, and everybody came from other countries, and they might actually be working for the country they actually came from, or their grandparents came from.
Well, what you see a lot of the time is you see a lot of the British track a lot of Americans, and we track a lot of British, and then you see a lot of like sharing of information that takes place that way.
Because of Five Eyes.
Yeah, because of Five Eyes. So I think most people just don't know how this stuff actually works in practice.
No, they don't.
They understand it in theory because they like read somebody's Twitter stream or something. I don't know, like
Yeah, can I
Twitter
speak
thread
to
or
this
whatever.
really quickly? So
Yeah, go
you
ahead, Chad.
mentioned that we're a melting pot. Do you know where that word comes from? Was it Dana that said that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's Israel Zangwell's play, The Melting Pot. This is an idea and a word that like comes from like the '60s, pretty much. So you'll complain about Kushner, but then you'll like, I don't know, live by the social conditioning and social engineering of another Jew. It's kind of interesting.
No, I mean the way to think about it, not to put too fine a point on it, but the way to think about it is we have a society right now of like 320 million people coming and going, right? And the only way to really deal with them is to build up like a surveillance state, in order to like process who's
I see that
hard
now.
pass.
I mean,
it's not a hard pass. If we want to stay safe, it's
I don't like it. It's just like what's happening. You know what I mean? Like if it were up to me, we would never have let you in, Prodigal, or your ancestors, But it wasn't up to me,
Yeah, it's the question of if diversity
You like
is
this when
actually
we
a
were
strength.
killing the Turks and saving fucking Western Europe.
We don't have a choice in the matter at this point.
Well, I mean,
have you found which ones are looking at you in your towns? Because I found the one that's looking in our town. So go look yours up.
I mean, the problem is you're going to have a security state built for you. The question is, will it be built by Americans
or by another country,
by Israelis or Chinese or
whatever.
The
UAE, which is the one I found.
Mm-hmm. And the UAE is ultimately Chinese because the Arabs don't actually build anything.
And they were former Secret Service that started it, before 9/11. And they still work there. And then that's where YAR comes and visits all the time during COVID. So, I mean, I'm just telling you, I can prove all of what I have.
Yeah. How do you think that? I mean, I understand what you're saying about the inevitability, but how do you actually believe, after seeing what happened with COVID and everything else, the war on terror, that a surveillance state will be beneficial to the average American in any manner? I mean, these are people who don't give a fuck about the cartels, the borders, overdoses.
Well, no, they do 100%.
Their cities. How the hell is this going to make our life better, Chuck?
Dude, they're absolutely pushing back on the cartels in all kinds of ways now.
Ooh, big time. Have been. Even through Trump's presidency, they did.
Do they not utilize the cartels for a lot of their like clandestine actions and stuff? I mean,
sometimes they do. It depends on which cartel. Some are more friendly to the U.S. and some are less so.
They've taken down a shit ton in Italy, all over. It'll blow your mind. Do y'all follow Interpol? Because they're doing massive stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the Italian mob is basically on its ass in a lot of.
I think so, especially
the
in
cartels.
They are heavily infiltrated in Italy's government and businesses. I mean,
they are.
They're not as
no. They are, but they're not
ruthless as they used to be. They're smarter.
Yes, they've been sort of led into the government and pacified in a lot of ways.
Yes. Well, same here.
They're not as, and the cartels. I mean, look, the cartels are sort of quasi being invited into our government in all kinds of ways. Hence their involvement with Ken Paxton and with, Greg Abbott and maybe even with Ron DeSantis, if we could be so bold as to talk about that.
Rudy Giuliani.
Elaborate on DeSantis for me. I'm curious.
Well, look at Vertol. Vertol is the firm you want to look at, which are the ones ferrying all the migrants.
Immigrants. That's right, from the airports to the private airports.
And Vertol is obviously also moving things other than just immigrants.
And Vertol also has Pegasus software, because I found that, if y'all are interested in looking at it. And it also works with Elbit.
What's their business? Are they a jet or logistics company?
In theory, they're a logistics company. In practice, they're a smuggling business.
Yes. And they were based out of Oregon and Washington.
They were moved from Washington State to now Florida.
Texas. To Florida. That's right. That's right. where Elbit Systems is, and
Mhm.
the NSO group was there.
Well, the NSO group stuff in Elbit is all there because the military base is there.
And then if you go look up the people that work on those and their LinkedIn.coms, they've worked at NSO Group or they worked at Elbit Systems. I mean, it's all there for everybody to find if you actually just go look.
Yeah.
Go to open secrets or open corporates and see who owns it, and then go look at their LinkedIn, and it'll tell you all their biography of where they've all worked, and you're like, holy shit, they're just making the rampant. Oh, Pfizer. I mean, they're at everything. I mean, it's not hard to do.
Yeah, Richard,
Charles,
so do it.
I think, Charles, I think Trey wanted to ask you a question too.
Oh, I just saw that Trey just joined. So good to see you, Trey.
He wanted to ask you a question.
Hey guys, how are you?
Welcome, Trey.
Nice to talk to you again, Charles.
Go ahead. What's up?
Oh, no, I was just wanting to join in this conversation. It was interesting.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. We have Mason there too. Hold up, let me invite Mason up too.
Hey, Prodigal, how are you? What's going on?
Charles, I came in a bit late. What was the consensus opinion on the J6 grift? I was
so we were
interested about your comments about
that. Tom, are you still up? Tom, are you there?
I doubt it.
Everyone falls asleep.
Sometimes he's snoozing. The other Mason, I think the other Mason was in this space too, and maybe he can give an account of it. But yeah, we hold up. I'm gonna bring the real Mason up. But basically, what happened was we were in this space where this guy Stu Peters, who's like the big anti-vaccine guy, but he's also
which he's right about, right?
Yeah, he may be wrong. He may be right about being anti-vaccine for the wrong reasons. Would be the way I would frame it. It's sort of like, you don't get points for, you can be correct, but if your math is wrong, right? So anyway, I just shared.
But in this equation, you avoid the long-term adverse events and potential death, correct?
Well, we could talk about the vaccine all day.
Yeah, let's not get sidetracked.
Let's not get sidetracked. Let's focus, Prodigal. Focus. I know it's hard for the Eastern Europeans, but we're going to focus here. So the thing that happened was we were going on about, what should be done with all this video footage. And my argument was like, well, it should be released to the public. It shouldn't just be handed to Tucker Carlson and his producers to analyze.
Yeah.
And if we're going to have this video footage, like, let's have the video footage out. Let's hand it off to people. And then I said, somebody who's helped jail a lot of people, I can guarantee you that this video footage will lead to more people going to jail. And, and they were all upset about that. And I was
like, but it would be the right people, right? If it was an ordinary American or anybody who they viewed as a political enemy, it would have already been public. They would have already named them and indicted them. The only people that this could potentially fuck are traitors in our midst, or people who, helped plan with the government. In my opinion, allowed to happen that day.
It's like you believe the rhetoric of Marjorie Taylor Greene or
Here's
something.
What I said.
They're terrified of
what fucking rhetoric is there, Richard?
Hold on. Time out.
What was Ray Epps?
Hold on. Slow. All right. We can talk about the Ray Epps thing in a second. Let me just recount what happened in this space, and then you can go knife each other. Okay. Let me finish. All right. Here we go. So what happened in the space was that I was making the point that that there are various people out there who are using the January 6th episode to get people fired up and angry and to build databases of people who are angry. And one of the guys, Stu Peters, said that basically everyone needs to have an uprising and they need to overthrow the government over this. And I was like, bro, we're not shooting anyone. We're not hanging anyone.
Yeah, Fed posting's never good.
We're not putting up with this shit. And if anyone does that, then they're stupid. We should not allow this. And I know Pam is here, and Pam was a January 6th.
Well, that's what set him off.
That's what set him off, and he started calling me a coward and everything. And I said, basically make my day, And I pointed out that he was a failed rapper, which he is, and I pointed out that I didn't know he was a wife beater, but apparently he is. And
Is that like real or is that like alleged?
yeah, no, that's real, man.
Is that? Could you like? Is there like any source to that?
Yeah, there is. There's
Okay.
a lot of sources of that. It's up in the jumbotron, but Prodigal
Okay.
keeps
Cool. Yeah.
sharing shit that gets in the way of it.
I mean, I'm not like for or against him. I like to see when things are
No. I
that
mean,
serious or brought up.
it's not my opinion that he's a wife
Yeah.
beater.
That's good.
I mean, obviously, like, frankly, I don't really give a shit if he's beating his wife. It's between him and his wife and the law, you know. But I did bring it up because I think it's important for people to understand that he has a history of run-ins with the police. He has a history of
disavow. I don't know any of this, so I'm not. Chuck, you do what you got to do.
My main issue.
Yeah, I mean,
I was like, my main issue is like he's talking to these dummies sometimes and he's like, we gotta take him to the gallows. We need to fight him. Like people are thinking, yeah, he's gonna get Nancy Pelosi and fucking Marjorie Taylor Greene hung on us. And I'm like, just these. You gotta think normal people. These people don't think so, or some people don't. I don't know. These just meatheads are out here. I don't fucking know what's wrong with these people. But they fall for the grift.
I mean, it would be a sight to behold.
Yes,
though.
it would be, and yeah, take him to the gallows, and yes, and archery or whatever. I don't care.
Well, he was also saying he had proof that he was there with the video, which is done on TikTok, and then he's got hashtag Newsmax, which is all China, and then he said, I went to jail for 3
Take it back.
months and had to pay and it took me 18 months and all this money, and I'm like, what?
But hold on, Charles. Your point. I've noted Stu Peters as well. I noted that he got in contact with Fuentes. I think he spoke at some of these AFPAC types of things, America First Political Action Committee, and he's one of these people who just they come out of nowhere, and I guess they're good at influencing, but there's no real discernible reason why you should listen to anything they say. They're just loudmouths. And he can definitely, I didn't hear that space, but it doesn't surprise me in the slightest bit that he's getting people riled up to do another J6.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know if I could say
yes.
I wasn't.
But you're saying
highly
Nick is. Wait, are you saying Nick is?
No.
No, what he's doing.
Stu Peters.
Oh, still. Oh, I don't know about still.
Yeah, no, that's the person that we're talking about. I'm
Chuck, leave the J6 stuff up there because Richard brought it up.
I wanted to leave the Stu Peters stuff up there. You can put up some of the stuff.
Well, when's the rap video from? Is he talking about 90s or 80s?
No, that is what we're talking about with Stu Peters. I know. I wanted to bring up Pam though because Pam was actually jailed, on January 6th, and Pam agrees with me on kind of what's been going on here. Welcome, Pam. If you're there, can you hear us, Pam? Maybe some slight technical errors.
I will say, Charles, also, I will say one thing about January 6th that is kind of like a little bit of a misinformation. So when how a lot of people were saying that these January 6 prisoners were being put in solitary confinement.
Yeah,
I've heard that.
So you heard of that? So actually, what was going on is basically all the jails in the Virginia, D.C. area during that time, and most jails in the U.S., frankly, especially because of its proximity to COVID.
You don't get placed into solitary confinement.
They put you into
trespassing on the Capitol.
No. Yeah. Can you listen to what I'm saying, Prodigal? So what they do is this because of COVID, they do this quarantine in prison. So basically, you're put in solitary confinement either just by yourself or with one other cellmate. And it's basically 23 hours in the cell, 1 hour outside of the cell. And they did that for 2 weeks as soon as you're processed in. So I guess a lot of the times people just said, oh, it was solitary confinement. But this is the treatment that every single person that was going to jail was getting because of the circumstances with COVID. And I think that was more or less the case than them just like putting J6 prisoners in solitary forever. It was because of the quarantine, and they did that for every single person that went to jail. Basically throughout COVID.
Yeah, you give a lot of benefit to your government. I've heard differently.
No,
I'd love to hear from Pam.
I mean, unless they were put in there longer, but I can ask Pam. Pam, probably, did you go through a quarantine-esque kind of thing when you were put in jail as well?
Yeah.
Oh,
we can hear you, Pam.
What's the question?
Go ahead. You just Pam, tell us. You were in that space earlier, and that's how we connected with one another. what was your impression of what people were saying about the January 6th stuff, and what's been your experience on the January 6th stuff? Because my understanding is that, you went to jail and that you've, maybe you could give us your history a little bit on what happened. And then we'll have people ask you questions as needed, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, well, I've been thrown under the bus by the January 6th community because I take responsibility for my actions that day. It was a restricted area. You were not supposed to be there, except for I have an excuse, but I don't. See what happened when they started pushing on those barriers. Now, I'm not on the violent side. I call it, I'm not on the west side. It's the other side. But William Dunphy was pushing on the barriers and the officers. So an officer saw me panicking. He pulled me behind him. And then he said, go to the captain. Then the captain said, go to the steps. But once I got to the steps, I got trampled on, my knee cut, my shoulder pulled, my glasses broke. I was a mess. And the officers pulled me behind them again. But see, once I was on the steps and safe, well, they broke through again and got up to the doors. I should have left. It doesn't come to you to leave because I'm a citizen journalist. I had to stay in video. So, but I don't take the stance of, being a victim. I made a choice that day, and everybody argues it was our house. We have a right to be there. Not that day. I'm sorry, not that day. They had a restriction. You were not supposed to be there.
That seems very reasonable.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's arguing differently against trespassing. I think the argument where I would have is, I want to know if you had 8 people in the Proud Boys and the number 2 of the Oath Keepers, and you were embedded there, and you won't disclose how many assets you had. I want to know how far in advance you knew of any potential issues and why you let them occur. I mean, this is a reoccurring issue with federal agencies. We saw it with Whitmer, with the Bungalow Boys, etc. So I don't disagree with, okay, but it also has to be proportionate. Trespassing on the Capitol and putting people in solitary confinement or away for multiple years. When I saw literally cities burned, people killed, police cars firebombed,
Come on,
they were
Prodigal.
granted bail.
Prodigal,
Like,
you're just
the
doing
justice
this.
system is not working.
Slow down. So you're comparing what I did with what somebody else does, so it gives me an out?
No, it's called equal application of the law and the ability to receive a fair trial.
It's not happening. Welcome to China. It's not real.
I agree with you there.
Yeah.
So how long did you spend in behind bars, Pam?
Well, I'll just tell you quickly. I'll be 70 in April. I'm an alcohol and drug counselor for 38 years. I've been sober in Alcoholics Anonymous for 43 years. I have no criminal background. I was used as a pawn just to show the world and I'm struggling with breast cancer, what we will do if you were there on January the 6th. So they made me the face of January 6th as an example for being there.
So, but how long were you in jail?
60 days in prison. The number 2 worst prison in the United States. 95% of the inmates in my unit were cartel women with lifers.
For the first 2 weeks, were you quarantined?
No, they told me I would be if I don't take the vaccination, and I was one of the advocates that you swear that you'd never take that vaccine. I never would. It's a long story.
They actually, see, that's a little bit interesting, Richard. That they would force you into solitary if you don't take the vaccine.
Well, just take a vaccine. But Pam,
yeah, but
do you mind if I ask you some questions that are kind of probing, because I'm really interested in the subject, and I'll if you don't want to answer something, just tell me. So I'm curious about the road that led you to January 6th. So where are you from, more or less?
You mean, did I walk there? I'm from Boise.
No.
I'm from Boise, Idaho.
Metaphorically. You're from Boise, Idaho? Yeah, okay, cool. Well, you live pretty close to me. So had you ever been involved in politics before?
No, I'm a retired alcohol and drug counselor. 2016, at the Standing Rock protest happened in North Dakota. That's the pipeline, the No Dapple. And I
Yeah.
called my brother and I said there was an Amy Goodman from Democracy Now! Put up a video. A lot of people don't know about this. That this dog had bit a Native American. So I called my brother and I said, I got to get up there and help those Native Americans. They're attacking them. He said, Pam, there's two sides to every story. And I thought,
Sure.
I don't believe my brother. He wouldn't be against the Native Americans. So I went up there against his suggestion that I investigate further. Well, it turned out it was ACOA, the Muslim Brothers, all the left you can think of, all the names, Black Lives Matter. The lady that started the protest took $1 million GoFundMe and went to Paris. I wrote a book about it. It's called We Stand, We Resist, whatever, I can't remember the name. But I wrote a book about it for history. You don't want to read it, believe me. It's not a book I try to promote at all. But I have the history.
So you got into you became interested in politics due to
because they lie. Because they lie.
When you say they, who are you talking about?
Amy Goodman from Democracy Now! I got a video. What turned out was that the dog had blood on its mouth because the Native American had beat the dog. I have a video. And then they had a girl with her face smashed in. That picture was from 5 years ago in England. They did everything. I subtitled it, Where the Leftist Tactics Began, and now they're coming to a city near you.
So do you think you were basically psyoped to go?
Well, hold on. Charles,
Go ahead,
don't jump that far ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Richard. Go ahead, Richard.
Go ahead. Did you vote for Donald Trump in 2016?
Yes, I did. I'm still a Trump supporter.
You're still a Trump supporter. Okay.
Absolutely.
Who did you vote for in 2012?
God, you want me to remember that far back?
Well,
I still have chemotherapy. God, I can't remember. Obama? I think I did.
Did you vote for Obama?
I think I did.
Okay, yeah. So this is, you're not alone in this. There are a lot of people who did this, particularly from the Midwest and our neck of the woods. I live fairly near you. But was it in 2016? When do you think that you were? How do I say this? When you really cared about politics and you
there
were
was
trying
the
to
Charlottesville riot that gave her the passion.
Particle, please.
How did you know that?
Stuff.
Did you read my book? I talked about Bill O'Reilly.
Well, what did you say about that lowlife?
Well,
so you started to uncover stuff. When was that protest that you started to uncover things and you started to see the lies?
The 2000, the No Dapple pipeline protest.
Was that like 2017 or I can't remember exactly?
Well, it started in 2016 and ended when Trump was elected. He stopped the protest. And remember, they're environmentalists, right? It cost $3 million to clean up the mess they left there. Right. They blamed the sheriffs. They lied and lied and lied.
And I noticed on your Twitter profile that you say, I believe in God. I believe in God even when he is silent. Were you always a religious person? Because, you're putting your religion right out there on Twitter. It means something to you. Were you always a religious person?
Well, I'm sober by the grace of God, one day at a time. In Alcoholics Anonymous, it's God as you understand him.
Okay. So what tradition were you raised in?
My mother was a psychopath. If you ever saw the movie Misery.
I've seen it. I've read the book, actually.
Well, you met my mother. My brother and I.
Oh, dear God.
We have written a book about our life, but we're not putting it out there yet. It's too dangerous. But we've spent 10 years writing it.
So
just
was she very religious? Is that what you're saying?
No. She was
just a psychopath?
The real one.
So were you raised, when you were a young person, were you ever confirmed into a religion, or was that an important part of your identity?
No, me and my brother were 4 and 5 years old. We walked to a church because we wanted to get out of the house that morning. And that's where I found
interesting.
we both found God. I hung on to him, but no, my stepfather ended up going to prison for killing and molesting a 5-year-old. I was raised with 2 maniacs. I have
Oh my God.
serious PTSD issues, but I share with everybody that you can recover and you can heal and have a life. How my brother sits on $5 million. You would think we would be bums underneath the street, but we're not, because of God and because we fought back and said we're not going to have the life that she tried to give us. And so
Yeah.
we stay sober and we do the right thing one day at a time.
No, that's very inspiring stuff. I agree with you. You can always pull yourself out of a hole.
It's a choice.
Yeah. When did you, and I hear also from you that you take responsibility for your actions, and that is also very important. You said that, it was a choice to do that. Did you, again, religion seems to be very important. Are you part of any kind of denomination, or did you have a kind of conversion at some point?
No, well, remember, religion means a way of life, and church means gathering. So my
Hmm.
church is my Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, and my religion is how I live every day.
Interesting. Do you have a community that you talk about the stuff with? Like what, like for instance, I do a lot of spaces. I have a group that I talk to twice a week, and we talk about politics and philosophy. Do you have kind of a group that you do that with, that where you talk about, like, uncovering media lies and, or Trump stuff, or
No,
is Alcoholics Anonymous is the main thing?
no, I go to Bible study once a week with women, this women's group. I go to AA meetings and I pop in you guys' spaces to listen and learn.
Who organizes the Bible study?
It's just a group of women. We meet
Oh,
at
it's
a
just consensual.
we meet at a church, but we don't belong to the church. It's just a community Bible study.
Okay, that's interesting. And
I
so
take I take what I can learn. I leave the rest.
where did you learn about the 2020 election? Like, where were you getting all the news and stuff? Where was it on Twitter, or?
Well, let me back up. Um, as a citizen journalist, I was bored and I started going out there. People name me a citizen journalist. I don't think I was. I just enjoyed showing everybody on Facebook what was happening in Boise. Because we only have one
Okay.
news here. So I ran into Ammon Bundy. I don't know if you know Ammon Bundy.
The ranch guy who
Yeah.
got into a standoff. Yeah.
And he started a group called the People's Rights. And I thought that was interesting. Until one day they went into the St. Luke's hospital and they were going over other people's rights. So I backed away from them because I thought, you don't do that. You don't stand up for your rights when you're going over somebody else's rights. But he's a good guy. It's just some people get in these groups and they bad apples.
So were you learning about the 2020 election on Facebook, these Facebook groups you're involved with?
Yeah, just like everybody else, learn it the same way. News, talking to people.
Which Facebooks were you a member of?
What do you mean Facebooks?
Which Facebook groups were they Trump
Oh,
oriented, or?
probably all Republican groups on Facebook.
Did you go by yourself, or are you gonna meet it with a group, or like
Go where?
the January 6th when you decided to go? Did you have a plan?
Well, no, it was just, I really just wanted to see the White House and the Lincoln Memorial, take videos down there. Because you look at the Trump rallies, you go, oh, they'll be safe, no big deal. God, yeah, give me a break.
So
Forget.
where did you learn? Because I'll just tell you my own experience. I was not checked out of politics, but I guess I read a lot of mainstream media stuff. I read the New York Times, and I, read books and philosophy and all that kind of stuff. I'm not in with the people in a way. And so I was shocked by January 6th. I had no idea that it was happening, but you did. So where did you learn about it? Like, who told you to go there, or who sparked you where you thought, I have to go there?
Well, the same way you probably learned about it. It was on the news.
Well, I didn't. That's what I just said. I didn't learn about it.
Oh, it was somewhere. Trump
A
announced
day
it.
to remember, he said.
I
Right.
don't know. Yeah.
Were other people in your Facebook group going?
Um, I think there was a few. I don't remember now. Mm.
How did you get there? Did you fly, drive? Like what were the physical? Like
Took a plane.
in a
Took a
plane?
plane.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, it was like going to Disneyland. You're a little girl and you're going to go to Disneyland. And then you get there and they blew it up. So I was very angry about what happened.
So you did not, were you going, it sounds to me like you wanted to see an event, but you didn't want, did you expect any kind of like disruption of government when you went there?
No, because patriots see, Republicans, as far as I know, leave the Capitol cleaner than when they got there. No violence. If they respect the military that died for this Constitution, it's peaceful assembly, black and white,
Right.
period. Anything else is not patriot. Sorry.
Or I kind of disagree with that. Isn't like the whole aspect of American patriotism, like based on the Revolutionary War, which was violent assembly, which was revolution, you know?
Don't
I think
compare the
that's
two.
almost
Don't
an
compare
American
the two.
American.
There was no
That's all,
need for defense. What was the defense for?
well, isn't that
Who
why
was
we
it?
have like a Second Amendment? It was
No,
because
we
of
handle it through
American
the.
patriotism.
You handle it through the Congress. You don't go up there attacking the Capitol and attacking police officers. I'm sorry.
Well, I think that it was really just
For what?
okay. Here's how I see it. I see it as it was just a mess, logistical like disaster. It made no sense. They didn't even accomplish anything.
Right.
Obviously, I have to be very choice with my words here, but I think that it's a very American and almost a right wing / I don't know about Republican, but definitely a right wing and patriotic thing to assemble in like a violent-esque way, because that's why we have things like the Second Amendment. That's why our whole history surrounds around the
why we have
Revolutionary
the
War.
Second Amendment, Trey.
Is
That's
it not?
simply
That's like
a
one of like the biggest reasons
insane
why it's the right
myth.
to bear arms.
Protesting is the First Amendment.
Yeah,
What?
protesting is the First Amendment. Secondly, like George Washington led a army against people who were trying to disrupt the government. So I mean, the
let's
founders
say I'm not
obviously did
saying
not believe
I
that
disagree with it
you
or
have a
not.
right to a gun so you can kill them. I mean, it's just
No. Okay, I think a reason why the founding fathers created the Second Amendment was that if our country became some sort of tyranny-esque dictatorship, monarchy, whatever, that these guns could be used to restore order.
Why
correct?
didn't they write that if that's what they cared about?
Well, isn't that what every single liberal says? Why didn't they write this? Why didn't they write that? It's the right to bear arms.
They wrote the First Amendment because it was a fourth branch of government. They considered it a fourth branch. It was to keep the first three branches in check. But unfortunately, they seem to be captured.
Well, yeah, I mean, they don't want citizens taking guns to the government and shooting people. No one's ever wanted that.
Now you're talking
Militias
about the
were
Second Amendment.
involved
Now you're talking about the Second Amendment. I'm talking about the First.
Well, no one disagrees that they wanted some level of, public discussion and so on, although even that
well, it's
a
like
little bit
civil
suspect.
disobedience, right?
Yeah, you have to have a public because you need people to vent. If they don't vent, then it becomes action and violence.
Well,
So
okay,
when
these
you
are
stop
just
people from talking, then that's what happens. It escalates.
okay. We've also had sedition acts many times in our country. So,
I come from
yeah.
communist Eastern Bloc country, and the Balkan area is my family. So we fought Nazis. We've seen the Eastern Bloc. We've seen how it goes exponentially.
Yeah, it's not the same. It's not the same tradition, though. I'm afraid.
Yeah.
No, I've seen it go. I've seen countries go to communism.
I mean, I can see why you want to make it that way, but that's not the tradition of like. I mean, I'm a son of the American Revolution on both sides of my family, and I can assure you that your membership in a militia was kind of like your right to vote or your right to be a free man. It was something that you joined, not unlike the National Guard. I think the National Guard is kind of not quite opposite. It's sort of like, your right to join a jury trial, or your right to be, your right to bring your goods to market to sell. That's kind of like how we understand the Second Amendment. That's the context with which it's under. So for instance, like when my great-grandfather settled Idaho and Washington State, he, as part of being a man, age 13, he was given a gun and he was encouraged to shoot game and to use it to feed the family. That was just sort of the tradition there. And obviously you could use it for other things like shooting, I guess, redcoats circa 1870s, though it's kind of unlikely, or 1890s or whatever, it's unlikely. But anyway, the point is this communist revolution, argument is sort of not quite exactly right. It's a different way of thinking about it.
Can I just say something?
Yeah, but you don't just go there one day. You evolve there. For example, when you have no due process, I mean, I never thought I'd ever see it in this country, no due process. Have them see a judge the first day the judge is available and set the bill $10 million or something. But don't just put people in lockdown without due process.
They didn't really do that.
And then in the CCP, in their constitution, there's a freedom of speech. That's like they have a freedom of speech clause. But guess what? If you speak against the government, you disappear.
Well, I also see it as like, I'm guessing you guys don't believe the election was stolen, and that's fine. Most people don't. But let's say, in a hypothetical situation, an election was stolen.
I believe the election was stolen, and
really?
It's a good thing.
Okay. Okay. Then we're just gonna find
a minority position.
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear about my position on it.
Did you actually? So when did you Because I know your views on like Biden stuff. When did you like come to these views? Generally, from
what do you mean?
Just like it probably was like not as like black and white as I'm saying, but from like Trump to Biden kind of thing.
I just observed the Trump presidency.
Well, when was this? Like, when was what era?
I mean, I saw that Trump was way differential to the Israelis, and that the Israelis were hunting down those of us who wanted to be helpful to the Trump government in different ways. That was very uncomfortable.
Just more of like the Kushner-esque.
Not just the Kushner, the whole Federalist Society effort.
Okay.
I mean, the CIA literally asked me to go talk to Julian Assange, which I did, and then the Bill Barr FBI investigated me for having gone there.
So did you vote for Biden in 2020?
I didn't vote in 2016 or in 2020.
Okay. And
I donated money to Trump in 2020 simply because a friend of mine asked me to. Just to be clear about it. I don't really bother voting anymore. I think it's a waste of time unless I know somebody on the ballot personally.
Okay.
So to go back to Pam, you have depicted your journey as rather innocent, and I believe you that you went there to almost see an event and see the White House and all that kind of stuff. So what took you from, did you attend the rally that happened before the January 6th attack? Trump spoke, and he spoke.
Well, see, I got there too late. It was about 10:30, maybe. I'm not sure.
Where did you stay?
Oh, I don't remember. Downtown somewhere.
Downtown D.C. or in Virginia or Maryland or something?
No, right downtown, right by the event where Trump was speaking. Maybe a mile away.
So what is the process of you in the crowd? Like, how did you end up at Congress?
At the Capitol?
Yeah.
Well, I couldn't get through the crowd because I had I had breast cancer and I had surgery. And I still had stitches. So I knew not to go through that crowd, and I was really disappointed that I missed him. And I started walking around just videotaping because it was beautiful. All the patriots just walking around. It's peaceful. And I started asking people, is there going to be any more speakers anywhere or anything? Somebody said Trump was going to the Capitol. And then somebody said they don't know. But there was two people that said he was going. I said, okay, I'll get there before the crowd. That way I won't be in danger physically, because the crowds, even if they're peaceful, I had to be careful. So as I walked up there, and I saw the fence all around the Capitol. Well, my walk up there, it was peaceful. It was just people walking around talking. And I saw the fence, and I said, oh, no, we're not going to be able to get on the steps. And I said, well, I guess that's a good thing, though, because it got a lot of crazy people. And I just walked around, and then I turned around and I saw the Proud Boys. So I went with them and videotaped them and interviewed them until they got to the other side, and I didn't know what they're going to do. And I was tired, so I just went to the side that I'm on. What side am I on? Am I on the east side? And I saw that guy up there, William Dunphy. Now you guys can look him up. I think he was a plant because he started all this stuff. He had a bullhorn. He was riling everybody up with a whole bunch of other people, and they were saying, "What bus did you get off of?" And I thought, "Well, did they get dropped here from a church or something?" I'm so naive, you know. But
Wow.
Yeah, they're called agitators. It's
yeah,
about crowd psychology. So all you need about 1% of the crowd to get a whole crowd roiled up and start like
he
a mob and
did.
everything.
I thought,
Yeah,
oh, this is, he was
they're
negotiating with
professionally
this.
trained.
He was negotiating with the Capitol police officer, and I couldn't hear the police officer, but I heard him saying, "Look, we just want to go to the steps. That's all we want." And I said, "Yeah, let's go to the steps legally." I never would dream they were going to actually push on those barriers. To me, it's
Did you hear any
like,
explosions or anything?
no, no, there's no explosions. It's just insanity. But the officer saw that I was panicking, so he saved me. He pulled me behind him. Because what do you do? See, my stance is, if I could have just stood there and let everybody else run, I would have stood there. But see, I got pulled over by the officer, and because you got a barrier, and you're pushing those officers. You don't go past it for what? It's
Did
breaking
you
the
have a
law.
friend? Did you have a friend with you, or were you alone?
Well, me and this girl had a little difference of opinion going on, so I didn't meet with her.
Explain. So you went with a friend from Boise?
No, I didn't go with her. I was
Uh huh.
supposed to meet her there, but the night before we had a difference of opinion, so we
Over
split.
what? Over politics?
Um, yeah, kind of, because I don't believe in pushing cops and pushing barriers.
And so she was talking about engaging in violence the next day that
No,
you
she
didn't
was
like.
standing up for the people's rights that were doing that, and I don't believe in it.
Well, hold on. Is this before J6 or after?
No, it's before, because see,
Oh, I don't get that.
Ammon Bundy and the people's rights were going to the Capitol here, and and doing things I thought was over the line, going too far as I was concerned.
Well, was she involved in J6?
Yeah, she was there.
What was she doing?
And has she been arrested?
What
Nope.
was she doing before that has made you upset?
Well, just they were mad at me because when St. Luke's Hospital, they went in there because one of their um, friends had been pushed down by one of the officers here at the courthouse. But it was his own making because he was pushing on officers. So I'm just videotaping though. So I go up there to videotape them, and they're inside the emergency room where people may be dying, screaming. You don't do that. That's not how you protest. Because those people might have a father or a daughter dying. And so I told them to leave. I said, "Get out of here. This is not protesting." And they all got mad at me.
Right. But that's the Bundy situation. So she was a partisan of Bundy, and that's why you got into a disagreement?
Yeah. She wanted to know
Okay.
why.
But
Yeah.
you're still going to meet her in
Okay.
DC?
No. The night before I said no.
Okay.
It's confusing, I know.
And so you just went with the flow. I mean, so you were trying to be a journalist and document the situation, and that you were
That's
kind
it.
of going with the flow. Did the Proud Boys invite you to join them?
No. They were, in fact, trying to keep me away from them because
Okay.
I'm right. I'm
That's
really.
interesting.
Channel 6 wanted to hire me. I'm one of the best when it comes to taking video. I get everything.
Did you get hella likes on your Facebook post?
Oh, yeah. Everybody was following me. I was live on Facebook. All my videos were live.
Your own account or a group account?
No, mine.
Your own personal account. Do you have a lot of followers on Facebook?
At the time I did. Yeah. Thousands.
How many? Thousands?
Yeah. Because I was the only news. I
But
was right.
would
See,
they
I would go in
communicate?
front of, I'd go right in front of Proud Boys. Black Lives Matter. I'd bring them water. And I was the one that was telling the patriots, hey, back off. These Black Lives Matter have a right for their First Amendment. Don't be bugging them. And but they didn't like me anyway because I was a Trump supporter. And they circled me, and everybody saw me on Facebook, and 300 patriots came out.
Were you communicating with your Facebook supporters while you were going to the Capitol?
Yeah. When you listen to some of my videos, I'm talking to them.
And what are they saying?
Oh, nothing really. It's just somewhat. They wouldn't really say much. I don't remember now.
Were they urging you on?
Urging me on? No. Or urging me on for what?
Well, I don't know, to go into the Capitol. I mean, that's what I was. It's kind of a suggestion. I don't know. I don't want to lead you too much. I'm genuinely curious about like your experience because it almost seems like you were just going with the flow. You ended up there.
Yeah, if you knew anything crazy was going to happen, you wouldn't go either, would you? Foresight is great.
Did you know anyone who did know something crazy was going to happen?
If I did, I would have looked them right in the face and said, "Look it, I'm turning your ass in right now."
Mm-hmm.
I wish I had heard something. No way. We don't do that stuff.
Why did you have to go to jail if you were just
because
there as a reporter?
I'm trespassing. Doesn't matter.
Okay. I didn't get that part. I was just curious.
Well, see what happened. There was 2 officers at the door on my side, and they were letting people in and out. Now, when you look at my videos, you'll see they're high-profile January 6ers. But at the time, I don't know about the violence going on at the other side. I had no idea. How would I know? But anyway, there was 2 officers, and I thought, oh, well, I see people going in and out, but I'm not going to go in without permission. No way. I don't care. Because, people are like that. They'll just go do whatever they want. So I thought if I could get close enough and ask him, are you giving us permission? And then if he says, yes, ma'am, come on in, it's okay. I got it on video. I got proof, right? Because I'm just not going to do it without permission. But I got shoved in. I got pushed in from behind me. So that was my own fault. No, Pam's got to go videotape, Kind of mad at myself. Wasn't thinking. I'm not used to a crowd.
Pam, the thing was the Capitol building has been trespassed before during critical voting moments. For example, the Kavanaugh voting, and they just got trespassing tickets. They were arrested, but they got due process the next day or that day, and then they were released on trespassing ticket. So,
did you get arrested that day, Pam, or did you have to come back later?
No, in fact, I'm friends with the ISP here. They guard the governor here. Every police officer in Boise knows me by name, and I have a very good reputation. I caught the guy that he scratched our Liberty Bell. He put FUC USA on our Liberty Bell, and I caught him. Took the video to ISP and the graffiti they did here. But so I called him right away, and I said, Mike, what do? I got shoved in. I got video, I got everything. He says, don't worry, Pam, we know you. You're fine. I'll keep checking with the FBI. I said, well, if I'm in trouble, I'm turning myself in because I didn't mean to. I got shoved in there. But I
How
kept
long
in.
How long have you lived in Boise?
Oh, about 11 years, maybe.
Okay. Where did you live before then?
Well, you're getting a little personal here.
Okay.
Come on. What do you need to know that?
Did you turn yourself in, or did they come to you?
No, this is another story. It sounds like something out of a movie. I'm not kidding. This is the truth. And you can check my court records.
Oh, I'll believe you if you tell us.
Well,
I mean, it's already happened, right?
Well, I'm hearing about, I've already talked to ISP. He says, don't worry, you're fine. And I had been talking to them. I'd gone up there and talked to them. And they know me, you know. They know I'm not violent. I wouldn't break into a Capitol or do anything stupid like that. So, but I felt nervous, and my brother said, "Why don't you just go talk to an attorney? If there's any problem, then he'll give you the right advice." I said, "Oh, that's a great idea." So I went to this attorney on the recommendations of this lady I knew from People's Rights. So I go to see him. He sees my videos. I go back the next day to pick him up and talk to him. And he says, "No, there's nothing you did here wrong. You're fine." But where he put my videos, you got to go in a hallway of a building, and there's a fire extinguisher with glass. And I thought that was weird. So I went to get the videos. I brought them back to his office. I said, "Why did you hide them like that? That was weird." He said, "Well, I got to tell you, I quit the FBI." So he was an FBI agent. Well, he had been. Great.
Yeah.
So the prosecutor and my attorney, I gave him his name. I gave them their business card, a picture of it. They could not find him. I mean, could not find him. But I'm in the grocery store. I think this was right before I went to prison. And he was in the store. And I went up to him. I said, "Oh my God, they're all trying to find you to prove that I wasn't hiding. I was trying to do the right thing. Can you please call the prosecutor and my attorney?" He says, "I'm sorry, I don't know who you are," and walked away. But I took his picture.
That sounds like entrapment.
It was weird. Sounds like something out of a book. That was weird. He says, I don't even know you."
Did you get to keep your videos, or did you have to turn them in?
No, I'd put my videos in the bank for safety because I have a chemo brain. I don't know if you know what that is, memory loss.
Right.
And I thought I'd better put them in there because they could help somebody. So when they arrested me, they asked me if I had videos, and you don't lie to the FBI. And I said, "Sure, I have them in my bank." So they went and got them. I have 19 videos of that day.
But you kept them, right?
Yeah, I still have them.
Did the judge ever ask for copies, or?
No, the FBI took them. And they sent me back a copy. Me and my lawyer.
Gotcha. Well, that's a piece of history. I mean, you're going down in the records, right?
Well, I put a little clips of these videos on my Twitter. You can always see.
I'll look at them. Sure.
Well, I show you when I got shoved in. I show you when the officer pulls me over. There isn't anything. I'm not afraid of talking about anything because I tell you guys exactly if the FBI was standing here. There's no secrets. There's no secrets. What
well,
for?
a lot of the people that live around me, they would meet like at a fairgrounds, and the sheriff's departments were kind of involved in helping them to coordinate it and to tell them how to be safe when they were driving and to turn their phones off because they'd be bugged and they'd be followed. And it's all on video. I'm not just saying this; it's videotaped. So it was very bizarre in the area where I lived. And then, of course, two oath keepers were arrested that were from my area, and one of them was the one that was with Roger Stone all day, riding around on the golf course. But and Joshua James met a lot of this group through Cajun Navy when they would come through with the hurricanes, and they would have groups and meet that way. So it's just real interesting how all these people there's a lot of sheriffs involved. It seems to always be on fairgrounds or, kind of like where sheriffs would have the jurisdiction instead of like in towns and stuff like that. The gray areas, I should say.
Well, there's more good FBI than there is bad.
I would tend to believe that, but then I also live in Alabama, and I kind of say that not much got done over the last 20 years of my life with the FBI, more so in other places.
You got bad apples, and I don't care. Nurses, as a counselor, there were counselors having sex with the clients. There's nurses that you can't blanket everybody just because they're bad police officers doesn't mean they're all bad.
Sure,
I was
I understand that. Trust me,
I
understand
wasn't
that.
I was an ethical counselor.
I
Did
worked in
you
a
see the
rehab center.
FBI, the Philadelphia FBI agent who shot the dog in Philadelphia today in Rittenhouse Square? She
What
was
did you
apparently in
think,
charge of the FBI office.
Pam? Pam, what role do you think being an alcoholic played?
You mean a recovering one?
Yeah, recovering one.
Well, there's one of our steps that we constantly ask God for His will to be done every day, and if we've harmed anybody, we make amends immediately and ask God to forgive us and ask them for forgiveness. It's a way of life, uh, spiritual principles, morals, values.
Did
The
anybody
best
else
you
in your group go that were from that
no, not
particular
that I
group?
no.
Gotcha.
I mean, it's just you try to live the best life you can. We're not saints. The program says we're spiritual progress, not perfection. So you do what you can to help help people, and you're not gonna be perfect. I mean, nobody's perfect, but it's a constant self inventory, looking at yourself every day and seeing where you went wrong, and ask God to help you do better the next day.
I went through codependency treatment because my parents were getting a divorce, so I know that program, and I think it's a great rules to live by. To be honest with you, I still kind of use them in my everyday life, just because, like you said, they're good tools.
Yeah. But I just wanted to say I'm a Rosa Parks fan. Rosa Parks did the right thing. She just said no. And when Martin Luther King, he said, look if there's any hate or any violence, I'm not going to be a part of this. Oh, I don't care if you put
But
your thumb down.
isn't it like? Well, I mean, I don't know if I would quote MLK on that. Oh
How
yeah.
does well
How
yeah,
can you
well
blame Rosa Parks, who finally said enough? I shouldn't have to sit on the back of the bus. I mean, that's a low ball to fight right there.
well, I feel sorry for him. That's okay. She's a wonderful lady.
Yeah, she
And
was.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Well, you can't boycott because everything all our money is in China. Wouldn't that be
What?
nice? Just don't buy from China. Yeah, give me a break.
Wait,
Everything
what? I'm sorry.
all our
what?
money is invested there.
Yeah, no, you're right.
So greed is the
You're on
problem.
it. Yeah, you're on it. You're on point.
Are you LDS, Pam?
No, I don't have a religion per se.
Aren't you Christian?
No, I'm not a Christian.
How does it feel?
Why do you say Jesus Christ is my Lord?
As he is.
Well, this is what I was trying to get at. You didn't have a religious background, but then you do Bible study. I mean, what kind of organization are you involved in?
It's not an organization. It's just people like ourselves here decide to get together and read the Bible and interpret it the way you want. I take what I can use and I leave the rest.
Right.
Like I believe in.
What parts of the Bible what do you focus on in the Bible?
Well, right now we've been reading John. I take what I can, things I can apply in my life, the principles of do not judge. Don't judge. You want to change the world, well, start by making your bed. You can't even make your bed in the morning, and you're going to change the world. And then when
keep it simple, stupid is my favorite thing to say.
Yeshua went in the temple, and he confronted them in a very strong way. He said, hypocrites, you preach this stuff, but then you don't live it. So
I have a huge problem with hypocrites just like that. I can't stand it either.
You can preach all you want, but let me see your walk. Let me see what you do with your life.
That's right.
That speaks louder than anything I can say to you. I'm
I
sorry.
I
I don't
actually
know how I got to be the topic tonight. I didn't mean to
well
be.
no I want to learn about people because I think it was there was a particular group of people who ended up in J6 to begin with. And there's actually Charles. I don't know if you've read Robert Pappy's studies of J6 defendants.
I haven't, but feel free to
Uh,
share it up on the Jumbotron or
yeah,
send it to me. I'm curious.
yeah. I'll. It's easy to find. Someone else can do it while I'm talking. It's just he's at the University of Chicago Terrorism Project, and I actually remember him from. I never took a course from him or anything, but I remember him when I was there, and he was doing profiles of suicide bombers, actually. And he came to some interesting, kind of surprising conclusions about them. But he was looking into J6, and it wasn't the alt right activist ideologue type. It was something very different. It was a much more of a middle aged, I think around the average age of 40 or so, and it was usually people who were red, Republicans in blue states. That also seemed to be something. There was a higher level of divorce among J6 people than in the average population. I mean, for what that's worth. But my impression was that J6 people were, more like Pam and probably a lot or or something like that. It's a type of person who was radicalized, but I think in kind of a different way than we imagined. There, a lot of Q was reaching a lot of people like this who aren't really politically engaged normally, and a lot of former Obama voters. This is another trend that's really fascinating, a trend among Trump supporters and a trend among J6
Well, I
attendees.
shared it up in the Jumbotron. So this woman, Karen Jones, was a kind of mother figure to me when I lived in
Hmm.
California. And she got involved in the January 6th stuff and actually had the FBI show up at her home, and it was a whole to do. Didn't ultimately get in trouble, in any way. But it led to all sorts of stress on her financially. Like her credit cards were kind of nuked, and all this other stuff started happening to her. And it was very bad for her and for her family and all the rest of it. And she describes it as basically like, she's like you, Pam. She's in her, late 60s, early 70s, and she described it as like the president called her to be there and she wanted to see what it was all about. And so she showed up and went. And I think that there's a lot of people who fit that criteria who just they wanted to show up and they wanted to have, see the buildings, and they'd never been to DC before. And this was an occasion to do that. And just kind of fun. It was sort of like a Woodstock like moment for a lot of these people. And I think that,
Yeah.
there's something to be said for that too. And I've got to say, I often think we attribute a level of intentionality to people that I think is not really true. Like, I think a lot of us get sucked into things. And I myself, I don't know that I think it's fair to call myself an alcoholic, but I myself have had situations where I've been kind of mesmerized, not mesmerized, maybe not the right word, but like I've been swept up into crowds before. Like I went
Yeah.
to a sporting event when I was a kid where, or sort of like enthusiasm around the Red Sox winning, and then it like got violent or whatever. People started breaking things, and I wasn't breaking anything, but I was like in a crowd where like I was photographed where these people were breaking things, and of course like that occasion like it ended up in the newspaper, and that occasion people asking me about it, right? So there are things like that I think people get sucked up into, and that's just sort of like the crowd dynamics of it all.
Yeah.
So I'm
Also,
actually I'm actually very broadly sympathetic to like the Pams of the world, and I hope
yes.
I'm sorry to hear about you going through cancer, Pam. That's really terrible. I hope you recover, and I'm glad to see that you're still with us. imagine it's been quite a few years for you, with cancer and January 6th and all that. So I'm glad that
Yeah.
you're still alive and you're still with us.
Yeah, remember the percentage of the ones that did all the violence, that's a small percentage. Because how many were there? Does anybody ever find that out? Were there a
I don't think
million?
anyone really knows how many people were there. I know there's lots of pictures and
Um,
everything.
yeah, there's from the White House to the Washington Monument. I just posted on the thing. There's about what 500,000, 400 to 500,000, and then
Wow.
they said there was a lot of people on the between the Washington Monument and the Capitol buildings. A lot of people on the grounds there that I didn't see.
I
No
know a
way
There's
lot
a
of
there's a
lot
people.
more
half a
space.
million. No way there's a half a million. I went to the Women's March and there was a lot more people there than that.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know that it really matters, right? Because like large crowds are large crowds, right?
Sure,
Like
but I don't think
Yeah.
it was a half
you're
a
not
million.
there like counting people off as you go. But I
Well,
will say,
I posted the I don't mean to interrupt, but I posted one picture just from the White House perspective to the Washington Monument, and that was toward the end of Trump's speech.
I know a lot
So,
of people. I know a lot of people who went to it who live in the Northern Virginia area just because it was like something to go to. You know what I mean? I
yeah,
think that that's an element
everyone's
of it
locked down
too.
for years. They just need to want someplace to hang out, and
Yeah, I think people wanted to go. I mean, I know my girlfriend's family was at the protest. And my girlfriend is not terribly political, but she went because her mom wanted her to go with her, you know? So like there's a lot of people I think when you have a crowd of however large, right, you have all the different motivations for going. I know one of my friends went there because he didn't want his wife to go by herself. So, things like that. Um, so I
yeah, yeah. Excuse
Well,
me, Charles.
well,
I went there. I went there, and the only two things I wanted to just meet people, ask them why they were there. So I was hanging out with Bernie supporters, smoking pot. I was hanging out. A lot of Vietnamese people were there with their flags. I was like, well, why are you here? It's like, well, because of China. China's been a big problem for many years. We're worried about them, and Trump's the only one who stood up to them. And I was like, wow. And there was a lot of Vietnamese. So I learned a lot, because I consider myself an independent. Um, you know, uh,
I was
this,
there.
this,
So I wasn't at the January 6th protest, but there was like a pre-protest, like in the
mhm.
late December or something. And I was just walking in DC because I had a girlfriend at the time who lived in DC. And I was just walking there, and I sort of just like was walking, and this protest kind of like broke out around me. It was kind of weird. It was actually kind of freaking me out at the time. But anyway, I don't know. Richard, I think the sociology of this stuff is like ultimately interesting, but not really all that revealing. You know what I mean? It's sort of like there are these moments in time where like craziness kind of happens, and there's the madness of being a human being. And I do think that like obviously people shouldn't destroy government property and they shouldn't engage in violence with the police. I mean, there's really no defense of that. And it doesn't sound like that was what Pam was up into.
You know
But
what we didn't talk about when you were in that room tonight? Ivan Rankin was in that room.
yeah, I mean, Ivan's got a lot of problems for sure.
Well, he was there January 6th, helping promoting it, and he's part of Cajun Navy and a
Yeah.
couple other things.
Oh, he's
So,
up to all kinds of terrible stuff.
yes.
Who is Ivan Rankin?
The short version is he's some kind of like weird figure that
Russian spy.
yeah, he could be a Russian. I think she think he's more friendly with the Likud people than the Russians, but you could be
Oh,
right.
sure, through Georgia,
Yeah,
the
through the
country.
Georgia connection.
Yeah. And
He's
what's her name?
somebody.
What's her Pusha?
Yeah, Christina Pushaw.
Yeah, Pushaw. There you go.
He's always present at all these things. He's sort of like a zealot like figure who's at like every protest, every event. It's very
He
unclear
ran
what
for Congress or
it's
Senate.
for Senate. It's very unclear like what he actually does for a living.
Well,
He's
he
like
was
one of those.
DIA. He was in the military.
Well, supposedly
He's a
he worked for
lawyer.
supposedly he worked for DIA, and supposedly he's a lawyer. But people have like inquired into that background and found that like the story isn't quite as he says it is. So I don't know.
well,
I've only spoken to him a handful of times, and when you're at a table or something, and there's like 10 interesting people there, and then there's like one other person that you don't want to talk to, but that person like soaks up all the energy in the room. That's Ivan. It's sort of like, yeah, whatever, Ivan, I'm trying to talk to this person. And so he basically, during the Trump presidency, he basically spent a lot of time trying to, you know,
Cause problems.
trying to ingratiate himself in all these like elaborate ways. I find him very annoying, just
Oh,
personally, for what
can't
it's worth.
stand him. But he
Yeah,
was so quiet when you got in there, and then because he was talking before you got in there, and then I left for a
well,
little
he's
bit.
afraid of me. I know he's afraid of me because
Oh,
he's said to other people that he's afraid of me because he met me on a number of occasions, and I would just ask him very direct questions. I don't know what it is about these people. I think they just sort of like the word is out that I'm like not putting up with their bullshit, and so they oftentimes will clam up or run away or hide or whatever, and I find that really interesting. It's like I'm some kind of like Blade and they're the vampires or something. You know what I mean? Like there's
well, it's
something
just
very.
weird where he throws himself into, like when he threw himself into the Houston, flood and all of
Mhm.
that happened, and then I don't know. He's always in some
Well,
weird cracks and
there's a lot
crevices.
of people though who just love like these protest culture. Like they'll go to whatever the big protest is, whatever's the big thing in the news. And sounds like Pam, did you went to Standing Rock too?
Yeah, I went to the Standing Rock.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of people who went to Standing Rock and January 6th. It's my understanding that there's
Yes,
a lot of
right.
crossover there.
Yep, I remember all that, because that's the Oath Keepers, and a lot of them were there.
Not just that, but there's a lot of people who just went there because it was in the news a lot, right? I mean, it was
True,
all over the
true.
place.
Well, you mean Hannity?
Were you talking about Standing Rock?
Yeah, Standing Rock.
That was the left. It was all left.
Yeah, but
Oh,
there was like a whole bunch of people there who were also right wingers too, right? Who were the
No.
Bundy's
No.
not left.
No, but not the Standing Rock protest.
Yeah, but Pam, there was a lot of people. I mean, Tim Pool was there. I mean, was he a lefty then, or what is our?
Tim Pool, I don't know who that is.
Yeah, he's not a lefty. He's a piece of shit, but he's not a lefty.
Well,
What Tim Pool? He evolved. He kind of he's like a fiscal conservative, social liberal. So
He's a
and
piece of
he
shit.
hated guns. He hated
He's a
guns,
piece of shit.
and now he likes guns.
Yeah, that's what he is. That's what he is, Kevin.
I don't know about that, Kevin.
He's just a fiscal conservative. Yeah.
No, well,
He
He
is
was
so
literally
none
like
of
a
those
Bernie
things.
bro.
yeah, I mean, I would say he's like a Bernie Sanders libertarian type person, and
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Who owns his ass? Likud?
that's
I
a
mean,
great question.
anyone willing to spend, I think. He asked me if I'd give him some money for the Standing Rock thing, and I was like, no, I'm not going to give you money for that.
Why do
And he
people
was
come
like,
to you for money and to do stuff like that?
people have been coming to me with weird requests my entire life since I was a little boy, and I don't really know what that's about. But it's like maybe I just give off the impression that I can grant people's wishes or something. I don't know. But it's just like you have these things in your life where you're just like I don't really understand this.
Yeah, you're like the
Well,
genie in the
aren't you
bottle
a
or something, and
VC?
they're rubbing it.
You're a
Like,
VC, Charles. So that
Yeah,
makes
I mean I do well in business, but like but even before I had money, I had people always come up to me and ask me for weird requests over the years. I don't know what that's about. I've always wondered that. I don't know. Maybe I just
What?
give off a vibe or something. People are always I've had a lot of people because I have red hair like come up to me and want to talk to me about my red hair and like how strange that is, and so I just attract a certain type of person. I think I don't know. I've wondered it my whole life.
red hair's not strange.
It is for some people. It's very strange, and it was very bright, and I was very strikingly redheaded when I was a
It's
kid.
very copper,
well,
and I know a
Yeah.
lot of copperheads, and
No,
that's a
no. I
beautiful
mean,
rare color.
when I was a kid, my hair was even brighter orange. So I'd have people come up to me, particularly in the Boston area, and they would ask me questions if I was some kind of like leprechaun or something. It was very strange, and I've
Because
always
it
wondered
kind of
about.
glows. You have that
Yes,
rich
I've
hair.
had
I
people
mean,
come
I've
up to me and try to stroke my hair when I was like a kid on the subway or whatever, and they would ask me questions or like I'm not making this up. There's like video of it. My brother like video of somebody trying to do this to me, and they would come up to me and they would like pat me on the head and ask me for a wish that they would have or like to pray with them or whatever. And it happened like more than like 10 times as a kid, and it was really creepy to me, and I never really I thought it was like some weird Irish thing because I grew up in the Boston area, But I've asked Irish people about this, and they're like, I have no idea what that's about. So if anyone knows, I'm curious. Like maybe some cult or something. I don't know.
Well,
But
I love taking people and making them that color red. And I know y'all know who Kelly LeBrock is. And she was married to Steven Seagal, and they were doing Under Siege here. And so she asked if I would cut her hair off. She had a lot of brown, beautiful. She was beautiful. Remember, she was like in the movie.
it's, you know what it is though. I think there's something about the children of people whose family were like intel people or whatever. So like I've had a lot of weird stuff happen to me where people will come up to me and just like tell me things, right? And then they'll like disappear again into crowds. So like I don't know what that's about. Like I had a dude, the most recent weird thing that happened to me was I was going to Trader Joe's, and this guy, I'm like in my car. I drive a convertible, my top was down. And good night, Richard. And I was in the car, and basically what happened was this guy comes up to me, and he is asked me in German if I was Charles Johnson, and he's in like a Jeep, and he's wearing his his military uniform, his like military Air Force, whatever. And I looked at him, and like I looked up, and it's like I speak German, and I sort of saw him do this, and I was like, yeah, like I'm Charles, like what's up? I answered him in English, and he's like, oh, I'm supposed to invite you to something. And I was like, okay, like, what do you want to do? Like, we're in the Trader Joe's parking lot in Reston, Virginia. Like, where are we going? And he's like, I need your contact information. And I was like, okay, like, are you on LinkedIn? And he's like, yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. So he hit me up on LinkedIn, and then he invited me to this thing at the Pentagon, which was like, the German detachment at the Pentagon. Anyway, so that's like one of the weird things that's happened to me in the last like 6, 7 months. And I went and spoke at the Pentagon, because of that strange encounter. So you never really kind of know like what's going on with people.
Who
People
asked
are
you to go?
strange.
Do you remember him?
Yeah, yeah. His name's Johannes. His name's Johannes. I forget his last name. I can pull it up. Hold up. Let me pull it up.
Anybody can just go speak at the Pentagon?
Well, he worked at the Pentagon, so apparently he was apparently like, let me see here. I'll pull it up real quick. Johannes Rudolf Oberst is what he does, and he's yeah. I mean, you could look him up. Johannes Rudolf, JohannesRudolf. Anyway, so he and I have become somewhat friendly since that encounter. But then so I invited him to my birthday, like 7, 8 months later, right? So he came to my birthday party, and he told a totally different story about how he met me in front of all of my friends. There was like 30 people at the birthday, and he told like a wildly different story. And I was like, this is really weird, But like when you do the kind of work that I've done over the course of my life, you have all these weird things happen to you. And I never really like sit back and think about them, like why are they happening? But they've happened, and people who are around me and who have done business with me also know that like I just attract weird people. I mean, Mason's known me for a bit. Like, I mean, I had a sort of aura around me at Claremont too, but it didn't really become as crazy as it's become. But
it's got to be your type of personality. I mean,
I guess, or
you're
pheromones,
warm.
or pheromones, or
Charisma,
whatever.
karma.
Who knows? Who knows?
You
what it is?
you were very incendiary in a lot of ways, but you got so much outsized hate. It was very unsettling.
I got outsized hate and outsized love, which made me very uncomfortable. Like I had people who would like hug me and like thank me for various things I was doing, which I wasn't doing. Or I had people come up to me and tell me like I was the fucking devil, and I deserved all these terrible things happening to me. And I didn't really realize until I was like well into my late 20s. This just like doesn't happen to most people.
You still have that power now. That's what's happening to you. Like I've had to defend myself against
100%.
And it's like, you know what? Go fucking read a Substack.
I summon very strange people. I don't know what it is about it, but I do.
Well, you worked at Breitbart. Come on. And
no, it's not just the Breitbart thing, but even the Breitbart thing.
Breitbart, whatever.
So I went to go see Andrew Breitbart. I'll tell you what happened. How I met Andrew Breitbart. It's kind of a
but you hung out with Steve Bannon. I mean,
no. I'll just tell you. I'll tell you what happened. Okay, because it's curious. It's a weird phenomenon that happened. So with Andrew Breitbart, I was invited to a young person blogging contest, okay, where they wanted to
Blogging
give
as in cutting trees down?
blogging,
Oh,
like
blogging.
writing
Sorry.
blogs
Okay.
or whatever. And so they invited me to this blogging event at like the Lux Hotel in Los Angeles, and I didn't have a driver's license at the time, and I went there, and Andrew Breitbart was there, and he was drinking and like super drunk and whatever. He was going a little crazy, and he was like talking about all these stories, and he was just kind of all over the place. And I met him, and I said, "Oh, hello, I'm Charles. Like, nice to meet you, or whatever." And he looks at me, and he's like, "Are you pretty smart?" And my friend who was with me is like, "Yeah, he's pretty smart." And he's like, "Okay, you should work for me. Come over tomorrow." So like, I literally didn't even apply for the job. I just like literally like talked to him and asked him some questions about some of his stuff, and he hired me on the spot drunkenly. And then I showed up the next morning, like, "Hey, what's up, Andrew? Like, you asked me," and then because of him, I got involved with like right wing politics. I was not terribly like crazily right wing, but it was. And then that was the end of my freshman year in college. And then from there, he would call me up because I would always answer my phone at any hour of the day because, as you know, I'm a nocturnal basically. And he would call me up and ask me questions or whatever, and everybody else was asleep who worked for him. And that's how I like became friendly with Andrew Breitbart. He'd call me up at like 3 in the morning, and I would talk to him like it was 3 in the afternoon. And people were very surprised by this friendship. And then he died, obviously, and Steve Bannon took over the company. And his widow, Susie Breitbart, came up to me at the funeral and was like, "Oh, Andrew loved you," And he also had a son named Charlie, and I was Charles at the time or whatever. But anyway, she comes up to me and she comes up to me and she begs me to stay working for Andrew Breitbart for another year, for the Breitbart company for another year, and that's what Andrew would have wanted, and blah blah blah. And they paid me a whole bunch more money, right? And like, they didn't really supervise my work, and I needed the money at the time. I was like 22, 23 or whatever. And I had student loans, not a lot of them, but I had some. And so anyway, that's how I fell in with Steve Bannon, who was like running the company after Andrew's death. And it wasn't like we were best friends or anything. Like, he never liked me. He was an abusive boss, like really terrible person.
Well, he's an
But
alcoholic.
he may be. I mean, I don't know. I just know that he would call me up and threaten to shit
Look at
down my
his
throat.
face. His skin screams alcoholism.
Look, you could be right. I mean, I've met a lot of crazy people who are alcoholics who are perfectly lovely people,
So you started working for them before you won the Brindell Award?
Yeah, I started working for them before I won the Brindell Award. The Brindell Award happened when I was basically leaving Claremont. And so I got the Brindell Award and the Robert L. Bartley Fellowship at the Wall Street Journal, and then went to New York. And then I was in New York, and then when I was in New York, because I had made some money, I wore like some pretty nice suits, and I started going to all these events in like high end suits with like nice ties. Oh, I forgot to mention a guy I know who was a very like successful person. He died, and he gave me all of his tie collection, and he had like tens of thousands of dollars worth of ties. So I ended up, and then he was like my same build, so I'd like wore some of his shoes, like basically all this like high end clothing, basically. And then he took me to this Lebanese tailor. I didn't know I think he killed himself. I'm not totally 100% sure of like how he died. But anyway, he was somebody that I knew, I think he might have had like a rare disease or something, but he was a neighbor of mine in Boston. And he basically gave me all of his clothes, and he gave me a bunch of his books, and then I was like good to go. I was basically like I literally like stepped into the man's clothes. And because of that, I would like go into the office at like a fellowship, which was a glorified internship basically. But I would wear like, $5,000 suits and like $200 ties, and everyone thought I was like part of the, super wealthy or whatever. And I just wanted to look good in New York. You know what I mean? I didn't know anything. My parents like didn't teach me any of that shit because like they didn't really trust any of those people. And then because I had some money from the Breitbart stuff, and because I'd done pretty well playing poker throughout college, I had a lot of cash on me. And so I would just take people out to drinks. And in New York, if you're paying, people will talk to you about whatever you want to talk about. And so I would just ask anyone who was in New York, I would just ask to go to places. And, people would be like, "Oh, Charles Johnson, I'm getting an email from Wall Street Journal reporter." And then I would go out to them and like wearing my expensive clothes, and we'd go to a nice restaurant or whatever. And that's how I met like all these famous people. And then they introduced me to other famous people, and so on and so forth. So it wasn't like I wasn't like a doctrinaire person. I was more just like interested in these social networks that were forming around me. And because of them, I got all these opportunities. I mean, I met Dallas through Steve Bannon, who's in the chat, and like, he told me I should go see Dallas and Dallas's family in Dallas, and I was like, okay. And then I got on a plane and flew there and went to go see Dallas's family. So it's just like you don't really there's a lot of life where one thing leads to another, and like a lot of people think there's like some great master plan in people's lives, but a lot of times it's just like making sure you have a very large network and you can strike when the iron's hot. It's not like you're designing your network with all this attention to detail. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't work like that. So, that's sort of how these things go. And then when you're friendly to people and you're actually smart and you like work hard, people give you more work, and then you do well on that work, and then they like invite you into this other group. And so what ended up happening is I just kept getting like passed around and right
Totally
in
agree.
circles.
Totally. Yes.
And it
Yeah, you're
wasn't
not like
like
exactly like, oh, I got to
nobody ever
plan this
asked me
out so
my
I can be
opinion.
here when this happens.
Yeah, I didn't really like, I haven't voted. I think the last election I voted in, there was a presidential election, was like 2012 or some shit. Like, I'm not really, people think I'm a lot more right wing, but I actually liked Trump because Trump said he was for national health care, which I was in favor of because my mom was a cancer survivor, kind of like Pam. And so I wasn't, in 2016, I liked the more moderate Trump. I thought he was actually not trying to cut entitlements, which is what Paul Ryan wanted to do. So there was a lot of things that I liked about 2016 Trump. And I also thought he was funny and fun. And I thought it was cool that he was bringing all these like people who'd never voted before into the political system. And then I see, of course, they got radicalized by QAnon and other shit, but that didn't exist yet. You know what I mean? So there was a lot of things that like it could have gone very differently, and yet it didn't. So um, and I also just like, in general, I really like being invited to things because I'm not very terribly socially outgoing. So if somebody says to me, "Hey Charles, we're gonna do this, 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 and this," and like you have to show up, and all you have to do is look nice, and if there's like and pay for your meal, I'm kind of there. Like I certainly was there, like in my mid 20s. Like I didn't want to plan anything. You know what I mean? So you get invited to things, and then one thing leads to another. I think a lot of life is a lot more directionless in that way than people want to talk about. You know, like I read a lot of these crazy Twitter threads about myself, and it's like, oh, and Charles knows this person, and Charles knows that person, and it's like, yeah, I went to a dinner party when there were 500 people there, at this whole like, or I went to a party where there's 500 people there, and like I talked to like 40 of them, and like some of them were interesting and some of them went on. But I didn't know, like when I went on Joe Rogan's podcast in like 2014 or 2015 or whatever, I didn't know he was going to get like $100 million from Spotify 6 years later. You know what I mean? I didn't know like a lot of these people would become like household names. You know what I mean? It didn't cross my mind. It was just like, oh, Steve Bannon has invited me to this thing, and like I don't have a good enough reason to say no, and he's being kind of moody and bitchy about it, so I'll go. You know? That's kind of how I explain it to people. It's hard to understand if you haven't experienced it.
I like Steve Bannon.
Oh, you shouldn't, Pam. He'd take advantage of people like you in a heartbeat. No, he wants you. He wants you in jail so he can raise money off of you, Pam.
Yeah, Charles. Charles, I wanted to say I actually caught the last space
He
that I
needs
was
to be
in
in
when you
jail.
were in there, and you did quite a good job. Um, getting attacked. But I never seen you lose your cool, because I've seen many people hit you from, left, right, all these different questions, and you pivot left, right so easy. And this time it was just like they were just like angry. So I did a
Well,
good
they were
job.
angry and they were mean, and I was like, well, I'm not going to put up with
Yeah.
that.
But I stayed after you left, and the reason why is because they had traumatic events at J6. Like the one guy said he saw one woman get beat, like to death lit, basically. And he was like, he's like, he basically is PSTD. So he's like, I can say whatever I want now. I saw that. If they're willing to do that to someone I saw. So I was like, I couldn't understand why he would be angry, and
Well,
that's what it is.
they say all this stuff happens, and then you're like, okay, can I have some proof for that? And then they're like, no, fuck you. And you're like,
Yeah,
okay,
that's
well,
not right either. Yeah,
I'm gonna need some
yeah,
proof that that happened. Like, I'm not saying that it didn't happen, but like, there's all these
yeah.
cameras of January 6th, and nobody saw that cops beat a woman to death. Like, I don't know, man.
I
Yeah,
Seems
was
I seen
big
some
if true.
video. I seen some video, but I don't have a copy of it. But I'll try to get it, and then if I do, I'll send it to you. But
I'm
if
a
I
big
again,
believer in people just proving things, you know?
yeah,
And what frustrates me about a lot of those Gen 6 spaces is that, like, they don't use the Jumbotron, they don't actually prove anything, and there's just, like, a lot of nonsense in them, you know? So
yeah,
I was in one of those spaces and they had all these guys that I really supported up until I was in the space, really. Like some of the FBI whistleblowers who were more Steve Friend and Kyle Seraphim and them, and they're all talking, and they had one up, and they were talking about how there wasn't this UAR report that was done, or some sort of report that was done on January 6th, and I just kind of dug around for a little bit, and I found it, and I put it up there, and tried to, and they just continued on, like, just like, let's pretend like it just doesn't exist, and they didn't do it.
yeah, the thing that's been interesting to me about spaces is the degree to which a lot of people have revealed themselves to be kind of crazy, or the degree to which people have revealed themselves to be like very susceptible to groupthink. And there's a lot of times where I just want to be like, hey, what are you talking about here? And you can now do that with public figures if they like let you up on stage. So oftentimes that's what I do. I just say like, hey, what is this about? What are you talking about? What is this thing? And they have a hard time. They have a hard time basically. Like, I think one of the things that I've come to really like about spaces is that I have enough time to just sort of explain to people, yeah, like, this is what I think, this is why I think it, this is why you might think this, and that's why I think you might be wrong, but you might be right, and here's why you might be right. So I just kind of like walking people through the argument. And there's a lot of life that, like, you don't really get opportunities to do that. So I'm actually kind of grateful in a way for these kind of spaces, so that you can kind of see like who's full of shit and who's not.
and another thing too. It's another thing too is you get the uncensored version. Number one, but number two, there's only so many things you can do in 140 characters. And I'm old enough to remember when bills were being passed in this country when there was bipartisan support. It'd be like 70% Democrats, 70% Republicans. And this was like in the
Oh, well, they still
90s.
get passed with that. You just hear about the more controversial ones.
Okay, then party lines. Okay, I would like to read some of those because the ones in the 90s, I mean that the welfare to work act, that was beautiful legislation. Um, I know it's a tough situation and difficult, but they thought of a
Yeah,
lot of things
yeah. I
in
don't
that.
know. I don't know what I think on a lot of those subjects. I mean, I know what the history is, but I don't know. Things are much more complicated oftentimes than the history.
Yeah, but I can't think of anything since then that's been like a really good, because Clinton, I remember Clinton came on TV and says, "Listen, we got a problem. This is what we got to do as Americans," and we did it, and it worked. And ever since like the Patriot Act, it's been downhill since then. I mean, I didn't realize at the time, and I thought people were conspiracy theorists saying, "Oh, this has opened up a can of worms and terrorists and all this stuff," and now here we are. Uh, and one other question too about Gitmo. I thought the only reason why we had Gitmo open is because we didn't want to give them due process. So don't bring them on United States land, and you don't give them due process. Now that we have DC, so I'm thinking, wow, we don't even need Gitmo anymore. We could just put them in DC if they can get away with due process. I don't know, just a thought.
No, I mean, they give these people due process. I mean, the problem was just the sheer weight of the number of cases. So, I am going to shut the space down in a sec, unless anyone has anything pressing they want to say. Um, Mostly because I've failed to record it, which was stupid of me, and because I got kicked out of the earlier one, which was being recorded. But whatever, we'll do another one of these in the next
You
night
did
or something.
fine. You did fine.
Yeah,
Just
we'll do
respect
another
the
one in the
rules.
next like night or something. I do think I'm somewhat traveling across the country right now, so it's sort of like kind of harder to do these kind of things when you're traveling. So it kind of makes it somewhat limited. Um, but yeah, I do think people want to subscribe to my Substack. I'll be sort of talking about this. I'm kind of not sure yet what I think the next big piece I should do is. I'm sort of like mulling various things. I don't know. I kind of want to write something about the January 6th stuff, but I feel like everyone's
talked about it ad infinitum, and you can't really. I'm thinking about writing about the James O'Keefe stuff in a serious way, kind of like what's really going on there, but I'm not sure yet. I've got to sort of think about how to do that one.
And one more thing I want to mention, Charles, another good thing about these spaces is I realize that we have a lot more, and again, this is how I always thought, but I was scared to lose it. But we have a lot more in common, whether you're left, right, center, we're all Americans, we agree to disagree on certain things, but on the principles and values, we're very similar.
I don't know.
And
I mean, maybe I have
yeah,
noticed that like there's a whole lot of people on the right that just like really love talking over each other, and I find that really annoying. And then there's a
I
lot of
hope,
people on the left that try to get very emotional with each other. They
yeah,
try to get like super emotional, and it's like whoa, whoa, whoa. So there's a lot
I
of this
hope it's
stuff.
because they've been censored for maybe they feel like they've been censored for a couple of years and they're trying to get it all out.
Yeah, I
And hopefully this
guess.
will settle down another month or two. Hopefully,
I guess,
I
but
don't
there's
know.
a lot of people I just want to be like, listen, man, I'm not gonna like take the mic away from you. Like, say your piece, and then like, whatever. Like, so there's a lot of people here where it's sort of like they have been programmed to hate a bunch of people on either side, and then you're like, no, 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 I'm gonna let you have your piece. Like, say what you got to say, and I'll explain to you why I disagree with it, and or whatever, and then we'll go from there. But what happens is that you get a lot of these people that just like they talk over each other or they don't really reason or they sort of bring up a lot of talking points that they've got assigned. And so like when we have somebody like Pam where we could just be like, hey Pam, like what happened here, like tell me about this and tell me about that, there's a lot of times where you can actually learn by just asking people like obvious basic bitch questions that you're typically not allowed to ask for some reason in our society. There's like all these rules about what you can ask of people, and I've never really understood that, like why it is that we can't, or why it is that you can't just call up sources and ask them questions, or you can't really like raise deeper questions. So I don't know. It's something that's very maddening and kind of worrisome to me. But
Well, that was
I
because
I
that
think I
that's
think yeah, I
generational.
think it had a lot to do with the lockdowns, Charles. Number one, from a mental, not intermingling, because your brain needs to constantly be like interacting and have that
I guess,
facial.
I guess, but I never really
And
followed the
then the second
lockdown
thing is
stuff.
social media with the artificial intelligence. The fourth generation is here and it's really strong.
I don't know. I
And it's
think
self-learning.
I think a lot of
So
that stuff is overstated and overdetermined. I think that basically, just in general, I think what's happened is that a lot of people have not figured out how to talk to each other in a civil manner and articulate their point of view and what they genuinely believe. And I think partly that's because a lot of the times they don't even really know what they actually believe. They just sort of like draw upon tribal cues about how to attack each other and just like expose each other as fraudulent, or like people are not actually listening to what each other says. They're just sort of saving up points to go beat the other person over the head with. And I find that very kind of interesting, but kind of disturbing too in a way. But
yeah, I agree. It's kind of like a cult. And if you don't know what communism is, it means that the party's always right no matter what, right? So whether you're Republican or Democrat, and you're a Republican, you say, "Oh, the Republicans are always right." That's communism. And if you say the same thing about the left, that the left is always right, that's like that. People don't realize what they're jumping
yeah,
into.
that's a frame of it. I would put it slightly differently. I think people are a lot more tribal, but partly the reason I started doing these spaces is people started asking me questions about why I went from being a Trump supporter to a Biden supporter. And I thought, like, well, like, why don't I just tell them, And like, if people agree with that or whatever, that's fine. If they don't, that's okay too. But then I'll actually have like the ability to talk to them about why I think things, and then maybe they can improve how I think about them. You know, I don't know. I've reached a certain point in my life too where I'm at a certain stage where like I've done pretty well for myself, and I don't really care anymore. I just want to like, you know, have a bunch of questions I want to ask, and if people don't like them, then that's just how it's going to be. But in any event, I've got to go to bed because I have to get up in like 3 hours to catch a plane, and hopefully I'll catch that plane. But
Yeah,
if I don't,
Charles, thank you for your time again. I appreciate it. And I just wanted to, I know this is off topic, but we'll talk another time about 5G technology. Um, I know China has it fully blown. I just don't know how it's going to work in the United States with all the laws and stuff. I don't know what is data. Because data is worth more than oil today. So
Yeah, I don't know that I necessarily. I don't know what I think about the 5G stuff. I think a lot of the 5G stuff is kind of like it's like one of those things where people get very freaked out about it, and I don't know that I think it matters all that much. If
yeah,
that makes
it's
sense.
Chinese using for nefarious things, like they're identifying people's faces and they're arresting them because they're Uyghurs or something. So they're using
Yeah, I
it
mean,
with
look,
that kind of power. That's a lot of power,
the
5G.
Chinese are always going to do shady Chinese things because they're shady Chinese. That's kind of what they do.
Yeah, it's
They
just
get
like
better
with the
tech.
We've
data. So
we've actually got
so
more cameras per capita than China does. Obviously, we're not as big, but
Yeah, it depends where, Mason, and it also depends the quality of the camera. So
100, yeah.
my understanding is that their metro areas have more cameras per capita than ours do, but that basically they that basically that's sort of how to think about it. London, it's apparently the ranking is like Beijing, Moscow, London in terms of cameras per capita, and kind of makes sense to me. I don't know. I mean, I don't
yeah.
regard London as a police state personally because, like, I actually think it's a kind of a wonderful place to go on holiday and walk around and see all the sights and the free museums and eat the shitty fish and chips. I don't know why there's no good food in London, but apparently there's no good food in London, and it's just the rule. I don't know. And also, the women there aren't very attractive relative to New York or LA. But
There's good food in London.
That's important.
people will have to send me good restaurant recommendations.
Yeah, I'll give you a lot of great
I'm
restaurants.
gonna go
There's
there. I'm
some
gonna go there.
excellent.
I'm gonna go there in March. I think I'm gonna go to London in March. I'm not sure yet.
Have you ever been to the Corinthians? They have excellent restaurants in either the dressy or the down. I mean, phenomenal food.
Yeah, well, send me some things to do. I'm not. But when people are like, "Oh, they have great Indian food in Britain," I'm like, no. I'm talking like non-Indian food. I'm talking
Yeah,
like.
there's there's Italian. They have a
Well, get
great
me. I mean,
restaurant with the freshest fish. Oh my God, I love it.
I'm staying at this very wealthy friend's home, and he basically wants to go out to eat all the time, and he wants me to introduce him to one of my friends. He wants me to introduce him to a lady friend. So I'm gonna bring, we're gonna have like a good time for a
I
week.
can send you some awesome restaurants.
So yeah, please do.
I will.
And anyone else who's got good London recommendations, let me know. Things to see. I go to London maybe like twice a year. My business partner goes there more often than I do. Frankly, I don't really like the place. It's a little too
Me
much.
either. It's not my favorite either. But I do go to great restaurants there. So I mean, I'm talking phenomenal
It's
restaurants.
partly why I think we fought a revolution was to not have to deal with them. So it's sort of my attitude about it. But in any event, wish everybody the best, and follow each other, and subscribe to the Substack. And happy to chat with you guys all later. Take care.
Bye. Good night.
Good night.